All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of 10 Horse Money YouTube channel, Monday Night Live.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Glad everybody can join us. Man, football game. That was a good. What'd you think?
It's a good game.
Yeah, that was a good game.
So we're not like a divided house, but I had to give my son a bunch of grief because he's like diehard Chiefs, but he's 8, so he really doesn't understand the magnitude of it. So I was rooting for the Eagles the entire night.
No.
And he was every time that they would score, it was like just coming along, buddy.
Train, baby. That's terrible.
I just like to see a good game.
I do too.
Of course, you know, we're in Missouri, so
absolutely.
Chiefs are.
It's always nice to hometown favorites to win.
But man, I thought that that play, I think it was in the third quarter, maybe the fourth quarter, where there was a fumble recovery, and they ran it in touchdown. They called it back.
Yep.
I thought that was bogus, man.
Dude, Bolton scooped that ball for a second time. I was like, no way. He's got hands outrageous. I mean, just able to scoop that ball up while it's bouncing every which way. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I was actually talking to Mike about that earlier. Just like, okay, so he caught it. I don't really like this rule of we've got to take, well, how many steps was it? Like 3
14
steps
in control to make sure that we're not touching any other part of our body. But then the same play happened on the Eagles where they didn't overturn it.
Oh, yeah. Well,
coming down where he catches it off of his helmet.
And then another one where he bobbles it on the ground, you know, in his arms. And those are both catches. But the one time it hits his hands and he tucks it into his arm, they're like, no catch. Yeah. Nope.
Yeah. And I told my daughters, you know, that we don't watch a ton of football, but we always watch that game for sure and a lot of playoff stuff. But I told her, I was like, that's the kind of play where it makes it look like the refs could possibly be paid off. Right. You know, when something like that happens. I'm not saying it happened.
Well, no. And going back to it, not having any affiliation with either squad, right? But when they show it over and over and over again in 4K in like super slow motion, it looks like he's had that ball forever. Right. But when they went back and I think they shoot it twice in real speed, it was like bam, bam, and he was
he was just tucking it. It was on him. I mean,
yeah.
Either way, came out with the dub.
That's all that matters, man.
A chance for the year. So,
yeah, it was a good game, man. I enjoyed it. I just like it. Yeah. Like I said, I just like a good game where it's really close. Every once in a while you get that Super Bowl where it's like a blowout. You know, they win by 21 and the game's over.
It kind of started out that way, though.
It did.
Honestly, I was very nervous going into the game at all. I mean, I'm a Chiefs fan. Lived in Kansas City for a year and a half and got to be a part of that first Super Bowl win in the AFC Championship. So, Chiefs fan here. But I really was, if I had to have put money down, actual money, like, I don't know if I could have bet on the Chiefs, seeing how good and fundamentally good the Eagles are.
Yeah.
And we just play a lot of backyard ball, you know. But we played fundamentally good last night, which was why we won. But normally we just play so much kind of backyard, kind of ragtag ball, and it's a little scary.
Yeah, whatever was said in the locker room at halftime had to be the greatest speech of all time because they came out banging, man. It was like a totally different team in the second half.
I made some bad jokes today, but it was, you know, Mahomes got some really good treatment. Let's just leave it at that in that locker room.
Yeah, he did. He got juiced up for sure.
Yeah, had to.
You don't come off the
field
even
scrambling,
limping, and then make like 3 or 4 running plays.
Oh yeah. Ran for like 60 yards in the second half. It's like, what the hell?
Couldn't feel his leg from about
He's feeling it tonight. He's feeling it today.
Oh, I guarantee you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Still in bed.
There was some other big news today.
Yeah.
Initials.
The initials.
KVD, yeah. KVD. That's bittersweet, man.
Yeah, but man, I think we were talking about that. I think he's going to Bass. I think he's going to go in the elite exemption or something.
I think he'll use his what was that Legends?
Legends,
exemption.
Legends.
Yeah, that's where he should retire.
I agree.
I think. Yeah, I mean like he said, 28 years with Bass, and then he moved on to MLF for a couple. I mean, he probably doesn't want to retire there. Not that there's anything wrong with MLF, but just the simple fact that he spent so long there with all those guys and really built up the sport there. So
yeah.
Well, and why not try to hold the record? Because he's got one more classic to get, and then he's got it from Rick.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He's got.
Wait, what do they got? Do they have 4?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They both have 4.
So.
Yep.
Jeez,
I think that'll be surpassed. The way things are going as of late. You know, we've had 2 back-to-back champs.
Hank Cherry
did
it.
Jordan Lee did it, but he's not back.
Jordan Lee, yeah. Right. So Hank Cherry would be the only one to really do it, which I kind of don't see 5 coming out of Hank Cherry. Not that he couldn't, but does he have any other elite wins, just blue trophies?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't know for sure,
either.
but it doesn't. Nothing jumps out at me.
Right. Yeah, I didn't think so either. That's
heck. Look at Jordan Lee. Jordan Lee's same way.
He doesn't have any.
Only two victories are on the classic stage, and a red crest.
Jeez. Wait, was it the class? Was on Conroe? Was that what he won a classic there?
He won on.
Yeah,
Conroe,
that was. Yeah.
And
I couldn't remember if that was just a regular event or if that was the classic. That was whenever his boat broke down and he was stroking that big jig.
Yeah,
big old mob jig.
Yeah, that was cool. Tournament. That was like when
we had just been fishing college against each other. He was remarkable. I mean, I think I was a freshman in college and he was leaving, but he was just the guy in college. You know, and then it was Patrick Walters. I fished a lot against Patrick, and that dude is so freaking good. Those guys are awesome. But
who did Patrick Walters fish for?
I don't want to say it was maybe Bethel. I don't want. Or
not 100% sure.
No, I'm not. I just remember seeing him at all the events, and he always caught them. We knew, like, out of all the guys I knew he was going straight to it. You know, I knew I had a couple more years that I was going to have to really cut my teeth, but I knew he was ready to go, and he qualified immediately for the Bassmasters, and has obviously done really well since.
So Cherry's got 2 other wins.
Does he?
Oh, he does. Okay.
In
wow.
elites?
I was kind of
opens.
I kind of discredited him then.
Really?
Sorry, Hank Cherry.
So 2020.
Yeah, I'm sure he's watching tonight.
Yeah. Sorry, man.
2021 was I would assume Gunnersville. Yep. 2020 was in Gunnersville.
I think Lee Livesey, man, somebody to watch out for. He seems like he's just been on a tear lately.
Did you see his deal with Ballistic Boats the other day?
No.
You didn't see that? He was on Mercer's podcast. I mean, that's not my information to tell, but it was public, I guess. He had a big deal go down with them, I guess, and had to leave Ballistic and get a Phoenix a week before they're heading down to – they're on Okeechobee right now. Like, he literally got his stuff together, supposed to have a boat from Ballistic all this time, and then didn't get it. They just, at the very end of everything, said, hey, we can't sell you a boat. And he was scrambling to even find one to get down to Okeechobee.
I hadn't listened to that episode.
Yeah, it was. I didn't listen to the whole episode, but it was just a little snippet from Mercer put online the other day.
Huh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I listened to the KVD on Mercer today, and there's a lot of kind of irony, foreshadowing going on. If you listen to after the announcement today, what KVD, and then you go back and listen to the Mercer from around Christmas.
Okay.
Second week in December, probably.
Yeah.
You just. Some of it could make sense. I mean, I may be looking into it a little bit.
Well, see,
He definitely didn't say he wasn't opposed to ever coming back to bass.
When I sent you that message, I wasn't even telling you that one.
I didn't know that.
It's pretty good. It's interesting.
It was a couple Mercers ago, and I don't remember who he was talking to. I think it was somebody in the industry. It may have been Panger. Yeah, it was Panger, and they were asking about Kevin. He wanted the juicy questions, and. Who belongs back at Bass? And he said, Kevin, he's my best friend. And that's where he should finish his career at, is what he said. So I don't know if that's foreshadowing or if I'm reading way too deep into that stuff, but he hasn't done the greatest over there. I mean, he's not been a phenom.
No. And I mean, I'm sure we all had the same thought. I thought that he was just going to take that by storm.
Dominate it.
Yeah, with the number of, as I've watched him through the years, he's always been a guy who just caught a ton of fish all the time. He's covered the most water, caught the most fish. But he got over there, and it seemed like he kind of struggled pretty. I don't know. He hasn't made that many cuts even.
Right.
So
I don't follow it as much as I follow Bass. but I think it's just so hard to follow.
It is. I think that's the biggest criticism that I've seen from the MLF and what I feel personally, and that's why you've seen them going back to the 5 bass limit. It's kind of hard to continue to watch it too, as far as like to keep track of an entire event that's, I don't know, 7, 8, 9 days long with all the different chopped up things. Winner of round 17, you know, 2.2, you know, you're like kind of confused by it all. So I think them getting back to a 5 bass limit per day is just outstanding.
Yeah, I watched a lot of it today, and it was good. It was exciting. I mean, it didn't seem, it wasn't drastically different. It's still a tournament. They're still catching fish and weighing them and throwing them back or whatever. But the score, when I first turned it on, I'd forgot that it was five fish limit, and they were already into the second period. And I was looking at the weights. I'm like, man, it must be fishing tough because the weights were still really low. There was a lot of 9-pound limits and 4-pound limits. And then I forgot it's not like anything over 2 pounds counts. It was the best 5.
Right. So are they still having an A day and a B day or whatever?
I think so.
I think so.
I think that's still the same as from what I can tell.
That's what I didn't like. Is that
who starts the tournament on Monday? For goodness sake.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, I don't really want to have to watch. I want to watch all the anglers fish on the same conditions. Mm-hmm. That was always something that kind of bugged me. It's like, especially if you had guys that were really good in certain conditions and not so good in others. It's like yes, everybody that day has to deal with the same conditions, but I just want everybody on a level playing field and just be able to watch all of them do it. I don't know. I thought it got strung out too long.
I agree
for what it was, but anyway.
Let's see what Dustin's got here. So Dustin says, so MLF fish landing violation. Now the full weight of the fish has to touch something. I give it 2 years and it's just like bass are gone.
The violation.
So it can't be just a tail anymore. Which I mean,
well, they'd even gone to like a light touch or whatever was acceptable. Like if the tail brushed, I think you were okay. But if like any of the weight of the fish ever touched, they were, more than just like the tail actually touching something. Because that was kind of ridiculous. Oh gosh, the tail brushed the carpet when I'm trying to hold it on the scale, and it like that. Come on. But,
and that's the discrepancy of the official that's in the boat too.
Yeah. Right. Well, then you would see whenever they would decide, a tail would touch and be like fish landing violation, and the angler would look over at him like with piercing eyes, like, "Are you really going to call that on me?" But
I very rarely saw KVD get one of those because I think it has to do with who's in the boat. Sometime when that ref's a little bit intimidated, they kind of let
how
stuff
in the heck
slide.
How do you give Kevin Van Dam a fishing violation? I mean, be hard to do.
Think if Randy Haynes was fishing it.
Yeah.
Give Randy Haynes a fishing violation. I ain't got time for this. I'm going to the house. I got work to do.
Throw you out of the boat.
They
had some scale discrepancy thing that apparently when you're removing it from the scale or you're putting it on the scale, they're calling it something. I can't remember what it's called, but the fish kind of dropped as the guy was taking it off the scale, and he got a penalty for it. But that's referee discretion as well.
Yeah. I didn't think you were supposed to, because it was kind of like an in-between stage. Like you didn't have full control of the fish because it was just hanging from the scale. So I thought there was a gray area there.
There is something. It's kind of like he took it off, he unclipped it and he was holding it and then it fell off or something. There's a little period there where it's up to the ref it's the referee discrepancy on whether it was still the scale was still influencing it somehow. But there was a little argument that happened. I can't remember who it was, but I got to see that happen. That was a new one. I hadn't really witnessed that one yet.
I would have probably an hour to 2 hours with the penalties every trip out because I'd boat flip them and put them in the carpet.
If you watch anything I do, I'm not good about it. I don't even want to sit here and say, I mean, I'm terrible with a net for one. I tried at this first event. I'm better at boat flipping than I am at actually getting them in a net. So getting in a net by yourself.
You're boat flipping 7-pounders.
Not intentionally, okay? If I would have known that fish was that big. Oh, God. Yeah.
I tell you what, though.
I never lived that one down.
There's a lot of fish that you can boat flip that are, 5, 6, 7 pounders as long as they're coming.
They're coming. And that was why I didn't know that fish was that big. If you watch, I'm not like fighting it for a long period of time. I set the hook and it was coming right at me the whole time. Just reel, reel, reel. And I already had it coming my way, and I'm looking down. I see this thing, this long in the water. Like, oh, here we go. Had to go ahead and throw it in the boat. But
yeah. So what do you do in that situation? You realized that it was a 7 right before or realized it was a larger than you thought fish. What do you do in that situation? You already got it coming. You gonna stop, give him slack, and take a chance of losing him?
In the All-American that I fished, I was actually throwing a frog. So same scenario. And I was fishing on Douglas. The fish weren't that big, but this was a 4 to 4.5 pounder was like a 7 pounder, right? Like a 4 there is humongous. And I had a 4 on, and I was trying to reel him in, and I kind of had that same problem where I went to boat flip, and then I realized how big he was, and I didn't. Well, then he jumps. Instead of me just getting him into the boat, he jumps and hits his head on the trolling motor and knocks that frog out, and I lose a 4.5 pound fish and, end up losing a lot of money. I top 10 the event, but I could have, I got 10th. I could have maybe been in 5th with that. It was a huge fish. But so my thought is, if you've got them coming, get them in the boat.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think if you stop, that hesitation, I'm sure you guys have done the same thing. That moment of hesitation, whether, oh gosh, should I wait for the net guy or do I get this fish in the boat? That's more often than time when I lose fish.
Yep.
Rather than, just wrenching them in, keeping that hook tight in their face. So
there's very seldom that I don't. If I got bigger than 15 on, they're coming in the boat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you got to make sure you know what rod you have. Does it have the balls to get that fish in the boat?
Right.
And you got to know how much line you got out too, because the worst thing that can happen is you get halfway and your rod kind of noodles out and it just kind of falls out in the air. And then you're screwed.
I've had a couple of them on crankbaits that, looking back, I would have never boat flipped knowing what I knew after they hit the carpet.
Uh-huh.
But 4, 5, 5.5, 6 pounders, as long as they're coming 12-pound test line, they're coming up.
Yeah.
Use the momentum and put them in the boat.
That was 65-pound braid on a frog with an FX rod. And that was a 7.4 heavy FX rod. It was yanking it in the boat no matter what.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I thought that fish was half the size when I pulled on it. Still got that fish in the boat. So I did kind of slam it against the outside. If you watch it closely, I was like, oh, of course I did. But I really didn't think I needed to pull that hard. I thought it was maybe a 3 or 4 pounder. But anyway,
that was a cool one. All that matters is you got it in the boat, really.
That was my first fish of the tournament.
Really?
That was a crazy way to start. Yeah.
So let's
great way to start.
Let's talk. Let's dive into that tournament a little bit.
Okay.
I wanted to just start from the very scratch part of it, like tournament prep, like getting ready for the tournament.
Hold on, before we do that, we're 18 minutes in. We are going to do a giveaway tonight.
Oh yeah. Okay, so we got almost 100 people in here.
Okay.
We're going to do a giveaway tonight. And the way the giveaway works, for anybody that's new on here, the OGs, they know how it goes down. We're going to guess a number between let me back that up. Sometime during the stream, I'm going to make a reference to Sasquatch. When I make that reference, you guys at home guess a number between 1 and 200. We have a number right here that Austin gave us. Whoever guesses that number is going to win a Crocagator prize package, and Joey always gives away a really good package. So this is going to be a sweet giveaway. So keep your ears peeled for that. It'll be coming up before too long. Tournament prep, like, the season's coming up. How far out do you start prepping, and then what does your tournament prep consist of?
For this tournament in particular, I mean, I had been to Okeechobee one time in college. I don't even want to say I went there and knew what I was doing or had any idea of a good spot or anything, but I had been there. So I knew what the lake kind of looked like, and that it was really all 4 foot deep. I mean, you wouldn't believe this. One of the biggest, top 5 biggest lakes in the country. And this place averages out to be 4 to 5 foot deep. And it was high, and it was 4 to 5 feet deep. And it was just the strangest thing. I mean, I think I looked it up, 488,000 acres. So you take that, what are we, 52,000 acres on Lake the Ozarks, or 56?
Sounds about right.
Too.
Yeah,
but in mid 50s on 50,000 acres. And it was 488,000 acres. That's how big this lake is, just for instance. And it's mostly grass all around the edge. The middle has nothing in it, and I went right through the middle of it one day. I don't suggest doing that. Maybe I'll tell you more about that later, but don't drive through the middle of Okeechobee. Anyway, tournament prep. So I knew kind of what I was going to fish with, like February. I kind of start thinking about what time of year is it for them? Where are they? Is it spawn? Is it pre-spawn, spawn, post-spawn? Down there in February, we saw that it was going to be a warming trend and that there was going to be spawn. So I knew maybe have some bed baits if you could see. Obviously, I think every reel that I had pretty much went to braid except for 2 or 3 of them. So that was the expensive part, was just buying a bunch of braid and stripping off or tedious and expensive part was just stripping off all the fluorocarbon I had and putting braid on it. But I'd say, I'd watched a lot on Okeechobee. I think probably everybody has, just because it's one of those big destination lakes. So I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, and I actually kind of dug a little deeper into a couple of the guys that are guides down there. They have their own podcasts and they have their own little YouTube channels. And that was, I think, where I got a lot more detailed information than just watching tournament footage. Those guys had a lot of good stuff, kind of like little nuggets to say. You wouldn't get a lot from them, but if you listen to enough of it, you kind of got a good gist of maybe what you needed to look for. So went down that route. Obviously made some big Baitworks orders of stuff, whether it be frogs or stuff like the Big Easy or different flipping bait, stuff like that. Big tungsten, Here we don't need 2-ounce tungsten, but down there you do. So it's a different world. I mean, you're not fishing anything like you would fish on any of the Missouri lakes. So definitely a cool experience, to say the least.
It's hard to tear off perfectly good line and replace it with other line.
Absolutely. Especially when you're good, come right back, it was hard to do.
So you talk about the tedious task. I saw a post from McClellan the other day, and he had like 7 rods in the front deck of the boat, and he's just doing it all at once.
Yep. Yeah. I actually, Tom Lloyd showed me that one day. That of all, I don't know if you guys know who that is, but he had Tom Lloyd.
Oh yeah,
sure. Down the lake. He showed me how to take line off that way. I was like, because I was doing it by, one at a time, just as hard, as fast as you can, trying to wrap it around. And then he was like, dude, you can just take a bunch of them. I was like, you're smarter than me, Tom. So I learned that and did that quite a bit, getting all that braid on there. Yeah.
Typically, we're not restringing,
5 or 6 at a
time.
Yeah.
Usually. Oh, it was more than that, sadly. But yeah, a lot of braid went on this week. My favorite braid, by the way, if you guys want to know, I love, and I think me and Michael have opposing views on this, but I love the Seagar Stealth braid. That braid is, to me, the best braid on the market. I love that stuff. I think he's big into the J braid stuff, but big Seagar guy. Yeah. But I personally like the Seagar Stealth braid. That stuff is so smooth. Anything from the 50 to 65 is what I was putting on. So
is that 65 and 50? Is that like the slit coating?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like it just for like when you're flipping all that grass and stuff down there. It's a lot more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
That real coarse braid, like the J braid or some of your other braids, you'll find is, while it might cut the grass a little better, if you set the hook, it will cut through a lily pad a little bit nicer. But like just flipping around and stuff, it's so much louder, that really coarse braid is. So I thought that could give you kind of advantage when you're flipping around and it's real slick out, slipping that really quiet, like silky braid in there.
Right.
That was something Ishman Rowe talked about, was, trying to find quiet braid.
For what I don't like about that, just having limited setups.
Mm-hmm.
I like the coarser braid because it doesn't dig into the reel as bad.
Yep. Yeah, you do have that a little bit more, especially when you first put it on. You have to put it on pretty dang tight so that you don't have it dig in. But and I would say the little bit silkier braid will kind of, I haven't had any wind knots with it, like this week I didn't, but it will wind knot. That softer braid will wind knot a little easier than that coarse stuff.
Now that's pretty limp too, isn't it? Even in the 65?
Yes, that's why it will, because it's so much limper, and it'll get around your guide. But I don't know. I don't really have too bad of a problem with it. I like that. It casts way better too. That silkier braid does.
I think for casting baits and things like that, I like that a little bit better until I get into heavy slop with a frog, or if I'm punching.
Yeah. I can see that.
Thick. I like that little coarser stuff. So.
Yeah.
Any idea how many core that braid is from Seaguar? The carrier?
I do not. No, I know what you're talking. Like, I know they have that right on the Daiwa package, right? It's like 8 or 16. Yeah, I don't know on the Daiwa what it is.
I think you get used to that. Like I've got some of the. I use Power Pro. I just always have used Power Pro, and I need to try some other stuff because I know it's like it's almost like somebody still using Berkeley Big Game or whatever. It's like I just never got away from it because it's just what I started with.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with Power Pro by any means, but
yeah, I need to try. I've been wanting to try some of the Sunline braid and the Seaguar, just some different stuff just to try it.
If you're looking for something that'll skip a bait well, whether you're skipping like a frog or skipping, a buzz bait on braid, or a lot of guys that use fluorocarbon for that now. But if you are, that Seaguar's, I think that's another really big advantage is how well it skips. I skip certain baits in the fall, and that Seaguar skips it so much better than other braids. I don't know why, but anyway, I have no affiliation with Seaguar. I don't know why I'm pumping them so hard, but I really like it. I really like it.
When you find something good, you want to tell
the
people.
Smackdown?
Yeah.
The purple?
Smackdown, stealth, and the gray.
Okay, in the gray. Let's see.
Mm-hmm.
That one's any different. I'm looking it up right now.
See how many carriers it is or cores.
8 individual fibers.
Okay.
Whatever that means.
So it's 8 core, 8 strain, or whatever they call it. Yeah, Dustin says he likes Power Pro FX2 and Soggy braid.
Never heard of that last one.
I haven't either. John says there's nothing wrong with Big Game. Man, there's still a lot of guys.
I bought a couple of spools of Big Game last year.
A lot of guys still use it, man. I mean, it's tough as nails.
I just use I don't think I use mono in anything except for backing now. Just because I'm either using braid or fluorocarbon. Like I said, I even use fluorocarbon when I'm skipping a buzz bait now.
Yeah.
Just because I'm reeling so fast, and it does skip better than braid in general. Fluoro does, but
I just ripped off some perfectly good 10-pound fluorocarbon off. I had my third jerkbait rod, and I just did a video comparing fluorocarbon to mono using forward-facing sonar and how the depth of the jerkbait. So I didn't have any mono. I don't run any mono, and so I had to pull off this perfectly good spool of fluorocarbon to put some mono on there. And yeah, it was tough. I couldn't imagine doing that to 6 or 10 rods all at one time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I tell you what, I use my old braid for backing.
You do? Now, do you tie? The thing you got to be careful with there is, do you tie it into your reel?
No, but I've never had. I knock on wood over here.
Oh,
I've never had it slip.
You're lucky. Yeah, I was gonna say I've had it where I used to not tie it in.
Okay, hold on.
And it'll slip underneath itself.
Back up. I have like a 14 to 18 inch fluorocarbon or mono on the very bottom.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, you're good.
So
if you just put braid straight on the spool, it'll spin on you.
Yep.
I recalled that after I said all that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm surprised you've never had it slip if you do it like that. But anyway.
Yeah, I made that mistake a long time ago.
Usually it happens on spinning rods or spinning reels is when everybody screws that one up. So
yep.
Got a lot of Big Game lovers in there. That's cool. It's still around. That's why they still sell in stores, because people are buying it.
No doubt.
I mean, you listen to this, even like Matt Robertson is as country and as awkward as he is. It doesn't matter. We caught 25-pound stringers on Berkeley Big Game back years ago.
Right.
They still bite.
Oh yeah,
they're not that sensitive to it.
It's just the management of it. It's fluorocarbon's a little more sensitive. It's usually a lot of that mono. You got to stretch it out in the parking lot before you go fishing. You got to put your hook on your boat, walk all the way across the parking lot, and pull on it really hard to straighten it out. I know P-line was real bad.
Oh god, that was terrible.
Yeah, P-line was. That's what I fished with for a long time, and you had to stretch it out almost every trip, especially if it was cold.
I would say this would still been like 5 years ago, but the P-line, was it the CXX? Isn't that right? It's the fluoro mono. It's like a combination of
polymer,
fluoro clear. Yeah, the copolymer. That's right. I did use that for cranking for a season just to see how I liked it. It was really stretchy, which I thought actually kind of helped me keep fish pinned, but it was so bad with abrasion. that copolymer was. Like, it just got tore up so much quicker than your fluorocarbon does. Fluorocarbon just, it's kind of unmatched as far as being able to get nicked and still, like with a crankbait, and still be able to pull a fish in, I think, compared to mono.
Mike says, what do you think about Berkeley Fluoro Shield? I haven't used it. Have you used it?
Never. I'm again, no affiliation, but Seagar is pretty much, Seagar and Power Pro are the only two lines that I throw.
Yeah, so I pretty much just trust in Seagar. I have all spools of Invisex. I did use Red Label for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But I buy the big spools of 1,000-yard spool of Invisex in each line.
I've been using this.
How do you like that?
I like it. I like it. Yeah,
that was for the price point. That was pretty dang good.
It's $10. It's like Baitworks had it on sale like a while back. I bought like 4 or 5 spools of it. And
have you used it on winding baits?
Yeah,
and
I've used it on. So this is where, to me, this is the technique that it really reveals the quality of line is when you're dragging something on light line. So I've been throwing 8-pound. This Seagar 101 8-pound test on a shaky head, dragging it around some rough stuff, and it's been fine. Some other lesser fluorocarbons that are cheap, you start getting around that. Anything below 10-pound test, when you're dragging it around, that's when you really start noticing it.
But that's like we haven't seen a fluorocarbon that cheap though.
That's 10. Yeah, it's crazy, and I think it's good, man. I mean, I think it's good, you know. So I got a bunch of it, and especially for a moving bait. I mean,
yeah.
And I didn't have a problem dragging stuff around on it, so.
Right.
I mean, I'm still experimenting with it, but you can't beat the price. That's for sure.
No. It's like half the price of everything else, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's $9.99.
Well, yeah, because you got, I think, a 200-yard spool of Invisex is $20.
23.
Is it went up?
$22.99. Yeah.
Gosh, I haven't bought a 200-yard spool in a while.
It's went up. You Sunline's even a couple bucks more than that.
Well, I buy everything on that 1,000-yard or 3,000-yard spool.
Yep, I do too.
Yeah, Adam says he loves the Fluoro Shield, but that 101 absolutely his go-to. So it's good to know. I haven't used the Fluoro Shield, but I've used the Berkeley Nano Fill as far as braid. You know, that white stuff. I like that stuff. It was popular there for a while, and it's kind of nobody's really talking about it, but to me, that's some of the best braid that I've ever used as far as for a spinning rod. I'm talking about white braid. Does a good job. So back to what we were talking about, you do the tournament prep, and then you get down there. What's your plan of action once you get on the lake?
Drive 20 hours.
Drive 20 hours, and try to stay awake and not run off the road.
Yeah, we spent a day drive or 2 days driving down there.
I was gonna say, did you make it one day or did you take 2 days to do it?
No, we took 2 days. I think we drove 14 hours the first day and then 6 the second, and made it down there. And then we had a that evening where we just got settled. You only get 3 days of practice, and the lake is off limits for a month beforehand. So it does kind of limit you in your ability to see the lake. You think 3 days is enough, but on a lake like that, especially with the weather we had coming in, it was really crappy weather for the first 2.5 days of practice. So for guys that didn't know the lake very well, and with weather, anytime weather and wind or rain comes down in Florida, the fish is shut down. You get a cold front, and I'm sure you guys have heard that. It's just the fish is shut down. They do not act the same. So for guys that don't know the area, to come down, trying to find good places to fish when no fish are biting, that's a pretty difficult scenario.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we were given. And you could get a bite if you really slowed down. You could get bites in certain areas, but I wasn't confident enough. So I guess to say, like, what do I do when I got down there? I drove around to start with, and a big deal down there is looking for the right water clarity, because they just talk about those fish. They don't have anywhere to go, like up and down in the water. The water's only 4 foot deep, so they're always going to try to congregate in the best clarity water there is. And there was so much wind on the main lake that they were getting really tucked into stuff that back in these like little clear pockets, and the problem was that they were just wanting to come in off the main lake, but the water was so dirty they weren't staying there. So just trying to drive around the lake, get a little bit of understanding of the big areas that I've known about, heard about. You know, you've got places like the Monkey Box that are super famous, and Harney Pond and stuff like that, that, you know, historically are areas that win tournaments. Well, you definitely need to go down there and look. And that's what I did the first day, was just kind of bounce around, look around where I could. The wind was so bad that it was actually really hard to travel. Around the very first day, we had, 20-mile-an-hour winds in a lot of places, and on that lake where it's, you're 16 foot above sea level, and it's, as big as an ocean out there,
Mm-hmm.
those waves get pretty bad. So just drove around, looked as much as I could, kind of did that for the first couple of days, just trying to find a few areas where I could get bit, because from my understanding down there, if you get an area where you're getting 2 or 3 bites, there's probably a couple hundred fish there. And they congregate. It's not like Lake of the Ozarks where, you can cover water and catch a bunch of fish that are, across multiple creeks. It's kind of like, if you find an area, you can cover that water, but you hunker down in a really good little area, and there probably is a ton of fish in there. But my practice, I didn't find anywhere where I was confident enough to just start on the main lake. I had checked out some of the canals. That's where that one fish came from that you guys saw.
Yeah.
I knew in the back of my mind going down there that those were always an option, because I've seen guys like John Cox and a couple other guys go in there and snatch them up. And I knew if the weather persisted being that windy and nasty, that was always kind of a backup plan. Because if you got into those canals, it was Lake Placid back there. I mean, they were pristine and no wind, and a little bit more like home, right? As close as you could get to fishing like home and be on Lake Okeechobee was those canals, because there was docks and there was, it just kind of confined the fish. And I tried out a couple different canals, got caught one in one canal and got a few squirrels and the other on a frog. And that's pretty much all I needed to know, was that those areas existed and there was fish in those. I didn't go in there and try to beat up on the fish or anything like that. I just knew if I couldn't find anything else out on the main lake in my last day of practice, that was going to be what I did. And that's what I turned out doing, was heading to the canal the first day, which sadly from Clewiston is all the way across the lake. So I made the mistake. Everybody turned left out of takeoff, which was to run this rim ditch in the first morning. And I think I was the lone boat that just decided to drive straight out of there and go all the way across the main lake to try to make it to, well, I was the stupid guy. I drove across. As soon as I got out there, I knew I'd made a mistake, because there was another boat in sight and these waves were getting bigger and bigger. And I ended up actually I broke the plate off my whole front bracket on my graphs, and had to take my graphs off out in the middle of the lake. Dang. And then drive. Yeah, it was not a fun experience. So that lake is rough. I'll just put it that way. I came back down the rim ditch on the way back, which is like this little canal thing that runs the entire outside of the lake.
So that made you feel like you were on Lake of the Ozarks for a little bit, that rough water.
It was actually probably the roughest ride I've ever been in on a boat. Okay. So it was actually didn't make me feel like Lake of the Ozarks, made me feel worse. You get out there,
next level.
So, yeah. The nice thing about Lake of the Ozarks is you can see where you're at the whole time. You get out on Okeechobee in the middle, in every direction, you cannot see the land. It's that big.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it was dark and kind of rainy and nasty, and these huge waves are coming. You know how that feels. You're like, this is a little bit ominous. This isn't where I really want to be, and my graphs are falling off. Like, this isn't a good start. But anyway, so end up making it there, have to lock through. You have to go through a 2-way locking system there at the canal, and then got in there and started fishing around. Got to do what I love, which is fish or frog. So that's
did you beat everybody there even after all that?
Yep. Felix came up there too, and he was like boat 20 and I was boat 110, and I beat him by like 10 minutes coming across the main lake. But it didn't matter, because we were both sitting there waiting for the lock to open anyway. I could have just gone around, I guess. But there really wasn't that many people that fished that canal. I think there were 6 boats that ended up coming in the canal that morning. I mean, that's not that many, but it was enough to kind of make it a little crowded in those little canal systems.
Now, how long does it take for that lock to get you through?
It's probably 20-30 minute process.
Okay.
Yeah. It really depended on, I would say it's like 15 if nobody's there. Like the morning was nice, but on the way back, I knew it was going to be bad because it got nice out and there was boats lined up trying to get into that lock. So I'm glad I left a little early on the way back just because I don't think I would have made it back in time. That locking systems are kind of a risky move. It's not something I'd ever done before. And so I'm not sure why I did that on my first ever invitational, but I decided to. But I think they can be kind of risky because they can make you late.
So that was pleasure boats traffic, or was it actual fishermen?
Yeah. It was a lot of like pontoons that all go out and go crappie
just cruising.
Fishing. Yeah, cruising or there's a lot of crappie fishermen down there. That's what I saw the most of. There were some people cruising, but I'd say the majority. It's not like the Ozarks with just people cruising. It's a fishing lake. Like everybody down there is pretty well fishing.
You didn't have any jet skis or skiers going by you all day long?
No, luckily nothing like that. Thank God. That would have been bad. And plus, you can't do that in those canals. That was kind of the nice part is it was just quiet the whole day in those. That first morning, I ended up counting. I marked every waypoint that this happened on, but I had 13 fish eat my frog, and I missed them during that morning. 13.
Ugh.
And I was 0 for 13 on a wacky rig follow-up. I followed every one of them up with a wacky rig and did not catch a single one of them. That was hard. And I only brought 4 fish in to weigh in, two 6-pounders and 2 little ones. So that was a hard pill to swallow with that many bites. But they were spawning. So they were kind of just swiping at it and doing weird stuff. And I thought, honestly, that wacky rig was going to be a perfect way to catch those fish. If they showed themselves with the frog, you could just flip that little wacky rig in there and snatch them. But that they never once did I catch one on a wacky rig.
So where you were throwing that frog at, was it emergent vegetation or was it subsurface?
It was emergent. There was in those canals, there is no subsurface. It was all either some sort of it's like a flat reed kind of cattail looking deal with just no top on it, or they were just what are they, lily pads. That was pretty much what you saw. A little bit of this other type of grass that was just kind of a surface grass. It would kind of mat up a little bit, but they were not using that at all. For some reason, I didn't catch a single fish the whole time I was there around that stuff. It was always something that was stemmy and came down in the water because they were using that to spawn on.
Gotcha.
And the more isolated you could find it, the better. I mean, if you found a clump of lily pads that was 2 or 3 of them that were like this and just had a couple stems going down the water, you were way more likely to get a bite than if you just saw a whole field of lily pads that was 50 yards long.
That's like grass fishing, punching 101.
Right.
We always want to look for that. Even, same way dock fishing, right? If you find an isolated dock on Lake of the Ozarks, good luck. Yep. But if you can find an isolated dock, it's probably better than a row of docks.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, so you can kind of take some of the same, methods and ideologies that you have for fishing your home lake and still use them there. That everywhere you go, that isolated stuff was important. And everywhere you go, they want to have some type of cover to spawn on. On Lake the Ozarks, it's like docks or cables that are coming down to the water or like a pole or something like that. But down there, they wanted something hard like a reed to spawn on. They didn't really care for something that was just floating on the surface. So I found that kind of interesting. Like they didn't spawn under the mat. So I didn't catch any punching. I know a couple guys that caught some early in the week punching, but during the tournament, I don't think hardly anybody did. Everybody caught them out in the open.
Well, they talk about those. It's the hyacinth mats that get down there, but those are free floating. Could you imagine finding you a nice little pattern in practice, and then all of a sudden it's gone?
Right,
floated away.
Well, and that's to that point, that's what made kind of your pre-practice kind of studying a little bit difficult. It wasn't like there's hurricanes and there's big weather that come down, and it pushes all that stuff around. So none of that's really the same ever. Like if you went there 30 days beforehand, you go back down there. If there was a storm, it could look completely different.
Right.
So that was kind of a little more difficult too than like a normal lake where you can kind of establish a pattern on or something like that. You really could get screwed over by just the weather moving your stuff around.
Well, and like you said, when a lot of lakes, if the water gets muddied up a little bit, it's okay. You know, Florida is notorious for those Florida string turning off when the water gets muddy. You got to get away from that. And if you're facing tough conditions on a lake that you're not familiar with, getting bites is so key to putting any kind of pattern together. And when you're not getting any feedback, it's like it's hard to establish something.
I know I was in some of the best areas. I ended up getting to watch it on live the day I got, cut. The days I practiced, oh man, I was fishing in the right spots. And it was so frustrating to go, are you kidding me? Because, I'd watch them fishing these areas. They're like, oh, they're right in the mouth of Tin House on these isolated, reeds. And I'm just rolling my eyes because I was just there, but I didn't get a bite because it was really nasty and overcast and windy out. And so, you miss it by this much, and that's all it takes down there, at least. So,
well, that's the advantage of A, having been there multiple times, and B, next time things come around, you'll put that in the back of your head and you'll know, just because
absolutely
it's a good area. Just because they're not biting, they're there. They just weren't biting when you went through it.
Right. Man, we knew it was about to get good too. We saw the weather coming, but I couldn't settle with going to those places knowing that, and not knowing if they were actually good areas or not. Next year, you're right, I will know. But those guys that, like the guy that won, Weaver, I mean, he's fished down there most of his life. He knew exactly where those fish were going to go spawn and where they were coming in off the main lake. And he missed them the first day. That guy only caught 14 on day one, and then came back with 31 and a half because they came into his areas.
Dang.
That's impressive, yeah. And 26 to follow it up the next day. I mean, that dude caught him.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
What were the water temps down there?
70s.
Okay.
I mean, first morning that we were there, it was colder, and it's probably like 66, 68. And then the whole rest of the time, it was in the 70s. Weather was, luckily, it got nice by the tournament. It was nasty, and it was kind of cold, for there. It was like 60 degrees and blowing hard and raining. And that was a little bit chilly, but during the tournament, it was in the 80s the whole time. So I can't complain about that.
No, you say that. There was I don't know if this was like fake news or what, but it was, a Florida Weather Channel that said, temps are going to get down in the mid to low 50s. Keep your kids inside, bundle up.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait a second,
get your winter coats. Yeah.
Mid 50s today in Southeast Missouri, and I was sweating.
Wear socks with your flip flops.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that was day one. Day two, after seeing those 13 blow-ups that I missed, it was kind of, I had to go back. I knew they were catching them out on the main lake in some of those spots that I had been looking, but it was like, I think I could. I told my dad this, and I was talking to Michael as well. I told them both. I said, if I could get every fish that bit it in there in the boat, I'd have over 25, no problem. Mm-hmm. Like, I had 2 for 12. 2 hook sets, and I had 12 pounds.
Yeah, you were on the right fish, just getting them to connect.
Yeah, it was just a matter of actually getting them hooked. And day 2, rolled back in there, and it wasn't 10 minutes into fishing, and I had 1 over 5 eat it, set the hook. It kind of gets tight for a second, pops out. I'm like, okay, don't get frazzled yet. I saw what happened yesterday. These fish will turn on later in the day and really eat it. Maybe 10 minutes more goes by, and I see one, probably my PB, well, pretty easily my PB, eat my frog and actually take it down and start swimming with it sideways. So I knew he had it, and I set the hook and again, barely loaded that rod, and it popped out, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? But those 2 fish right there probably would have put me, I dare say, probably 14 or 15 pounds. That one was probably between 8 and 10 pounds. That ate it. The second fish I saw. But oh well, I only got 3 bites on the frog on day 2, and I was kind of a little hard-headed. That's kind of what I put in my post earlier this week. Was I got a little stubborn with it just because I saw those 2 big ones eat it right off the bat. And I had, I think, 1 or 2 more bites the rest of the morning, and I told myself they would keep turning on. I didn't want to stop because I'd stopped 1 lily pad too soon, And those are the moments when you really need to adjust. I mean, I learned a lot that week because I had probably 25, 30 minutes left before I had to leave, and I picked up a little Texas rig Cinco and flipped up a limit in 22 minutes, I think, on my GoPro. And I just rolled my eyes. I was like, I could have done that all day and caught a big limit, but instead I I saved a little bit of points and rode back and weighed in 8 pounds. So that was the end of that event for me.
Well, that's just after Gabe can attest to this, just like a lot of us from that fish Southern Illinois. That's frog fishing, like hero or zero. You're going to go out there and you're going to either catch 5 big ones, or you're just going to.
And I've analyzed that, man. The same thing. There's days when they just don't get it for whatever reason, and you can let them go with it. You know they have
and it still doesn't matter.
And no matter, it's just I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
that and you never like that frog day. It's either there, or it's not. It's not that they, that first day, 13 bites, 13 blowups. Whether it was the fish didn't have it, whether it was you were just too quick on the trigger, not quick enough on the trigger, any of those factors could apply. But the second day, that it's going to turn on. It's going to turn on. It's going to turn on.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I've been there day before practice, rolled my hooks under on a frog and had 30 blowups, and then go back the next day and not get a bite. It's like, what?
Yeah. They just glued themselves to the bottom day 2, I think. Because as soon as I pitched it in there and I pitched to a little isolated patch of lily pads and one popped it and I go, dang it. It was like and I had done that a little bit, but not on the right stuff. I got back on this particular canal stretch that had cleaner water. And I honestly didn't realize it was as clean as it was until the sun came up on the second day. And I was like, ooh, I've been in the wrong area all day.
Yeah.
Because it was actually the area that I had most of my big blowups the day before. I slid back in there later in that afternoon. And it was way cleaner than the rest of everything. And I go, just learned another lesson,
Yep.
That area was obviously where most of the fish were congregating because of the clarity. So I caught my limit on 150-yard stretch, with very limited time, just flipping everything I could. I think if I'd have flipped, that thing was a half mile long. If I could have flipped all the way down, I don't know what I would have had. But I just figured that out a little too late. I was a little too stubborn with the frog.
Yeah, that cloud cover is deceiving on actually telling the water visibility. It'll definitely fool you. It's hard.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been down there, and even if you haven't, you may have seen this. The water, it's not clear. Clear water down there is different than clear water here. It's what they call tannic.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a tea color or like a whiskey color. Like your best water clarity has almost got some gold to it. It's like gold and black almost. But it's clear. But when you look at the surface, it almost looks black until the sun shines on it, and then it has like a really kind of amber look to it. And that's your cleanest water. All your other stuff gets a little murky from clay particles in the water, and it's just a little dirtier looking, a little more like chocolate milk swirled in there. But
we have a lake that gets its tannic water.
Is it?
Yep.
In Illinois?
In Missouri.
Oh, in Missouri. Okay.
Yep. So it's a small conservation area lake. It's 2,000 acres, but it's wall-to-wall pads.
That's why, yeah.
But this lake will not. It can rain 4 inches and it won't muddy up. So,
that's cool.
Has a gravel road that runs. It's a square, and it's got a gravel road all the way around it. So no mud, rains for days, and it's clean as can be. So.
Well, it's so flat down there. There's not much runoff really,
right.
And then you got the riprap that kind of
filters everything out.
Filters it out for the most part, and then you got the grass, so it stays pretty clean.
Yeah,
but
same thing that June bug color that we don't hardly throw in anywhere else in the world works really well there.
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at what a black and blue jig looks like in there?
Yeah.
In the tannic water?
This water's not as tannic probably as Florida.
No,
but
it's got that reddish.
It's not. I don't think it's as tannic, but it's definitely more tannic than most places.
Oh, it's weird. So I was throwing a black and blue croc gator jig, and I would flip it in the water, and it would glow green in the water because of like the yellow kind of ambery look to the water clarity. It was almost that blue and the yellow were creating a green.
Huh.
And I'd heard a guy talk about that the blue you're thinking you're seeing, the black and blue you think you see is not what the fish are seeing down there.
Right.
And I was blown away. It was almost like a green pumpkin with like the black turned into almost like a kind of a gray green, and the blue turned into a bright green under the water surface.
So it
was very cool. Yeah. It's why black and blue is so popular down there. Cause I think it looked more like a bluegill than anything. with that green on it, but definitely different.
So there's a place for the actual old school color selector down there. Do you remember the color selector?
Yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Because you know,
that still has it.
Does it really?
Yeah.
It's probably worth some money.
It would be the black and blue would go the deepest and the red was the shallowest or whatever. Or are you talking about when it would pick the color for you based on
it's a little dial. It's got a probe. You drop it in the water and based on
I know what you're talking about.
Water,
I've never used that kind. I thought you were like the little slide thing I've seen before. Shows you what colors you use, but that might work down there. I think really all you need down there is like a June bug or a black and blue, but just because that water's always got a tannic tint to it. But that's a wrap with that event. I mean, not my favorite way to end it. It was so close to being good. Like that was the kind of the frustrating part is what I got on was just awesome. I mean, you can't hardly beat 6-pounders eating a frog, you know, but just couldn't get them all in the boat.
Did you try any different colors? Do you think it was a color thing on the frog?
No, I did. I experimented with a white, a black, and then Spro makes the color the other one I was throwing. I was throwing a white and black Vega frog, and then I did switch to kind of like a yellow. Yeah, it wasn't killer gill.
Red ear?
That's what it was. Yeah, there was the one with the yellow on the bottom. Just because I was like, if they're spawning, they hate bluegill. Let's throw something that's a little more bluegilly, get some yellow in it. And they didn't really take that any better, at least for me. I don't know. Thought maybe that would help, but that's actually the color I threw the second morning and had both those big ones not get it very good. So I went back to the black frog after that and didn't get any more bites, but so didn't work out.
Just one of those days, man.
Though, man.
It's tough. It's tough to see the fish and not being able to connect with them.
Oh yeah.
Pinned up.
Yeah, I think that's what hurt the worst is like, dang, like day one could have been nuts. I don't know what I would have had if they were all connected, but that is the nature of frog fishing. I mean, you got to know going into that day you're going to miss some fish, and you're right. I think the first couple of fish that ever bit it, I think I had it away from before they ever closed their mouth on it. You know, I'm
jacked up.
You know, yeah, I'm jacked up. I just had an hour-long boat ride across the craziest lake I've ever driven across, and I'm fishing for $100,000 day one as a pro, and I'm like, okay, here we go. And boom, I'm like, whack, as soon as it doesn't even get close to biting it. So, I mean,
you're like, if that fish even sniffs those legs, I'm setting the hook on them.
I mean, I was all teed up that morning, but I got settled in, and I mean, the fish I did catch, I kind of analyzed that a little bit, and I definitely gave them enough time. And there was plenty of fish that I'll probably make a little like reel of all the fish I missed from there. There's plenty of fish that I gave enough time, and like you're saying, they just didn't get it. So whatever.
Yeah.
Well, there's some of those days that, like, we fish a frog a lot, and you watch them just annihilate it. Mm-hmm. And you're fishing with a partner or whatever, and you just look at him, and you're like, man, he doesn't have it. And you just keep on working it. Mm-hmm. And then you get someone that doesn't fish a frog enough, and as soon as one just ticks the surface, they're just quack. And it's like,
right.
Oh gosh, come on.
It's usually a lot of times the ones that just a real soft bite, they're the ones that get it the best.
Oh, they got it.
They just come up, they're super efficient, they suck it in, and they got it.
Yep. That was
that really go crazy that you miss a lot of times.
That you miss. I had not to go off on a tangent with the frog for any longer, but that All-American I fished on Douglas. My little pattern I found was a cicada hatch pattern. And I was throwing a tiny little live target frog that I'd clipped the legs off and colored the bottom with black and yellow stripes because it just made it look exactly like these cicadas that were dropping in the water. It was like one of those 7-year hatches or whatever. And they were just hanging out underneath these like overhanging trees. And I could just skip that little frog under there. And they didn't blow up at all. They just came up because they'd been used to eating these cicadas. And those cicadas can't fight back or get away. They would just come up and slurp those cicadas. Well, they'd come up and get my frog and just swim back down. It was crystal clear water. I'd watch every one of them come up, pick up my frog, and swim down. It was some of the coolest fishing I've ever got to have. So
was that a tournament? Did Roger Fitzpatrick and Chase fish that one?
Yep, they fished it together on the final day.
Yeah. So Chase was talking about that. He was obviously in the back of the boat, and he was throwing a frog. and catching, just doing the same thing you were talking about. He was talking about the cicada hatch and everything, and so that's amazing.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Now it was kind of deafening. If you got in the right area where there was a lot of cicadas and you were in like a creek, by the time you got out of there, your ears were bleeding. I mean, it was so loud you couldn't even hardly think.
Yeah.
But yeah, that cicada hatch was cool. I kind of didn't adjust good enough. On the last day, I kept having them kind of short strike because eventually they were kind of getting used to seeing my frog in there. I only had a few little areas, and the whole week my co-anglers had been throwing a wacky rig, and not one of them got a bite. Well, on the final day, I come back in, and everybody else said, "Yeah, they wouldn't eat the top water," and I caught them on a wacky rig. I'm like, God damn it! Just missed it by that much. So anyway,
so you got a Clark's Hill coming up next. Is that a lake that you've had any experience with?
No, I don't think anybody I know has. You can't even hardly find any information on that lake. So that's going to be one. I've heard there's a little bit of bank grass. It's a huge lake. I mean, I've kind of tried to dissect it a little bit, look at the river systems, look at where the clear water is. I don't know what the water temperature is really going to kind of decide what I do. If the water's right for them to be able to spawn, I don't know if it quite will be. If it'll be warm enough, I think it'll still be pre-spawn, but I love to sight fish. So if there's an ability down there in South Carolina to sight fish, I will be in the clear water doing that. If it's still a little dirty, then I'm going to kind of pick my poison. I could go up a river and throw a spinner bait, throw a crankbait, flip a jig, or stay down and try to catch them on live scope, which is something I probably would head towards the live scope just because I feel like it's a little more of a sure deal rather than run up a river. But that's kind of my two punch right now. If I can't bed fish, that's probably what I'm looking to do. I'll just have to wait till I get down there and see the lake. There's not a ton of research I can do on it as far as, YouTube or articles and stuff like that. It's for some reason it's just doesn't have the following behind it like these other big lakes do.
That's the same for everybody, so that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Like we were talking to some of the guys that had even been there, and they said the same thing. Like they hadn't been there in 10 years, and they were 15 years, and they were wanting to do some research and couldn't find anything. So it's not a bad thing. I kind of like that. It kind of evens the playing field a little bit.
Right.
And
that's just in a couple weeks that you're leaving for that, correct?
Yeah, I leave on the 22nd, I believe, for that one. So, yeah, quick turnaround. Just about 10 days home. Because we just got home on Saturday.
So did you pre-practice anything?
No.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I didn't want to get – I think what happened to me, like I pre-practiced on Douglas Lake in Tennessee, and it kind of tore me the wrong direction one time because it was this similar deal. It was $30-day cutoff. So I practiced 30 days beforehand, and I caught them deeper. And then that had me on this deep bite all through practice, and I was doing really bad. So it really steered me down this wrong road. And on the last day of that practice, I catch them flipping a frog under for those cicada fish, and I'm glad I did. Otherwise I wouldn't have done well at all in the tournament. But I think pre-practice can sometimes hurt you. Not saying it always does, because it is nice to just go see the lake, but I'm not sure it's completely worth it.
I think some of those lakes that you don't know that have challenging running conditions. Just go learn the lake, put the rods up for 2 days and learn the lake, the lay of the lake. Excuse me.
Yeah. I don't think if you do it that way, I think it's a benefit. I just think you catch them 30 days beforehand, and yes, it gives you a starting point, but I think a lot of times you will get trapped into a pattern that you're kind of chasing a dying pattern by that time. And so
30 days that's a long time. A week is a long time. I mean,
exactly.
A couple days, things can change super quick.
Yeah, think about when you're practicing for a tournament. You might not have a weekday where you can practice, so you practice the weekend before. Oh, we caught him so good doing this. Halfway back in a creek, flipping these docks. You get there and there's not a single. You get there in the tournament, there's not one bite to be had there. So a month out can kind of, it kind of steer the wrong way. But you're right. If it's rough running conditions or something like that, like Okeechobee, where it might be beneficial for you to just know your way around, it's not a bad thing. But I couldn't really get away from work long enough and really justify driving all the way down there just to kind of learn that for myself. But maybe it would have helped.
Other than the waves in the middle of Okeechobee, is there anything else you have to watch out for?
Gators.
Lots
of alligators, but no, it's just really rough out there. It just gets, I mean, like a 5-mile-an-hour wind just makes that place dangerous.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
How many gators did you catch?
I caught one. I was the only one of the friend group to catch one. I caught it on a frog, of course. Yeah, of course it bit it well.
It got it good,
yeah. Caught it on a frog. It was probably 3.5, 4 feet long, but I saw some gators down there that I would not want to have to deal with. There's some big animals down there.
Did the gator keep the frog?
Nope. I actually got it to spit it out. I didn't set the hook.
Okay.
I knew what it was. I saw it bite it. It was like lying in the lily pads, and then it just snuck out and grabbed it. And I was like pulled, and I was like, wait a second. And I reeled it. And I actually have a video of me going, bad gator, and trying to get it out of its mouth. So eventually it spit it out. I'm glad I didn't have to pull it in the boat.
I always wondered if they'll ever blow up like a bass would. And just
he kind of did. I mean,
natural reaction. You just
I don't
crush
really think that it didn't come from below it necessarily. It just kind of like it was sitting there in the lilies. It was already had its head above the water. Yeah, he got it. But yeah, I don't know.
Like a 5 or 6 footer just coming up and crashing on a frog.
No, I don't want to ever have to see that if I can help it. No, I saw one that was probably 13 or 14 foot long while down there. Oh, it was massive, and it was just hundreds of pounds bigger than all the other gators I saw. You know what I mean? It was just like
an alpha gator.
It was like fully grown. Like there was another gator that was probably 10 foot sitting next to it, but it made it look like a juvenile. I mean, this thing was like a man-eater size. It was, and I got kind of close to it using the troll motor, and then it kind of turned towards me, and I was saying to myself, what the hell am I doing right now? Like this, it's like 3 foot of water here. If this thing wanted to get in my boat, it would. So
then what's your options at that point? You're not getting out.
No, I ain't jumping in the water. I have to like wrestle a gator in my boat. I don't want to do that. So no, avoided that tragedy. I got out of there. But
we got some questions on here. Let's start popping off some of these questions. Yeah. James says, do you think Lake of the Ozarks has turned over just last week?
Oh man. If you're asking me, I don't know. I haven't been on the lake in a while. I don't know if I could answer that one. Have you guys seen anything from that? Mm-hmm. I haven't been on the lake since the last Bass and Bob. I will say Mid-Lake was a little weird. I practiced down Mid-Lake, and it was a little funky looking. The water was. So maybe that's what was happening. But
yeah. Alfie says, what do you mean by turnover? And I mean, typically the most common turnover happens in late summer and fall, and that's got to do with the water's really warm, and then you get a bunch of cold fronts, and the water cools down, and cold water is more dense than warm water, so it actually pushes down. You get a little bit of wind, and it flips it over, and all this the thermocline that's underneath,
all the unoxygenated water comes to the top,
right? Because there's organic material that's just kind of dissolving and breaking up, and it just flips over, and it gets real funky for a couple days. The fishing gets kind of funky.
And kind of settles back down. A small pond, it could kill everything.
It can, yeah. Now this pond behind my house, we had a big turnover in June, and what happened was
I thought it happened more in the fall, so it's in the middle of the summer, huh?
Well, kind of late summer, fall, early fall, something like that.
I don't know much about that.
Anytime, well, with living on a little lake or a little pond when I was a kid, that thing turned over 4 or 5 times in 10 or 15 years when I was there.
Well, it can happen. Like I was back here, this pond, it was in early June. Mm-hmm. It turned over. And what happened was the water temperature was really warm, and we got a bunch of really cool rain, 3 inches of cold rain. And so the water temperature was probably in the 80s, and we got that really cold rain, and it caused it to turn over, and we lost most of our fish. Right. I mean, it was sad. It was all the big fish died, for the most part. But we had a huge carp population in this lake. I'd see them jump up every once in a while, but I didn't know how many were in there. And I went and got my musky rod and got like these 15-aught treble hooks,
like snagging hooks.
and we were out there snagging like 30 to 50 pound carp, trying to get them out of the lake. I got a picture somewhere. We had like 15 or 20 just huge, massive carps laying in my front yard, but it was fun. We had everybody in the neighborhood was snagging carp in a little 5-acre pond. It was a good time.
Well, they all come up like they're piping too. So they're all right there on the surface.
Yeah, you could see them. I mean,
Yeah.
I had big game, had 50-pound big game. Yeah, throw back to big game. What's up? Shout out to big game. It was fun. It was good times. Let's see, what else do we got here? Yeah, Stephanie says Okeechobee is like the ocean.
Yeah, no doubt.
What's up, Rich? Rich said Smallmouth Crush had the Jersey Shore on tonight, so he's glad to be on here listening to some actually real fish talk.
Well, you guys want to talk about what we got going on like the Ozarks soon or what?
Let's do it. How you finding the pre-spawn bite, or when do you start looking for that? Like kind of break that stuff down.
Okay. Yeah. Late winter is actually kind of easy well, I say that it can be tough, but late winter into probably mid-March kind of stays exactly the same. You can kind of find them doing the same things, just depending on where you want to be in the lake. They're actually doing a little bit different things. I think if you get mid-lake and up, they're a little more just kind of standard on your steeper stuff. You can find them. That's where I like to fish jerkbait a lot, is on that steeper stuff, like you guys probably in the back of a creek or something like that. And as you get down the lake into the deeper water, I'm just usually looking for, flatter points or stuff like that where I can find brush. And I think you can pretty well catch them on brush piles and different rock transitions from middle of the winter all the way till March 15th. On using your forward facing sonar, especially now. I think before it was a little easier to fish those piles before everybody started banging on them with the live scope, but now you really got to be dialed in with all that to catch them as good, because they just get so much pressure. But my main thing is, and it doesn't have to necessarily be in the front of a creek either. I'm always, you can go all the way to the back of a creek and find a brush pile that's got them just as easy as you can in the front. But that's kind of my method, is just looking for that right brush. And you can find it the way you find it. You can find it on your sonar, your down scan, your side scan. But a key I always tell people is, once you find it, stop immediately and look at it with your live scope. I look at every brush pile I've ever marked now since I've got live scope. I look at it with my live scope to know how easy is it to see, is there fish in it? Because you just going by and marking every brush pile you see and thinking, yeah, that's my milk run, I'll just run these tomorrow in the tournament, that's not going to do you anything. There's way more dead brush piles than there are good brush piles on the Lake of the Ozarks.
Do you fish in the wintertime? Is there a dock pattern on Lake of the Ozarks? I mean, I know it is in the warmer periods, but is there much dock fishing that goes on consistently, other than crappie? I'm sure crappie are pretty solid around the docks.
I'm sure there's somebody that does that. I've gotten so used to. I mean, if you were gonna do that, I could see just from the pressure of all the other guys jerk baiting and A-rigging all the main lake and secondary points in a creek. Yeah, I think you might find fish kind of huddled around docks just on a little bit steeper banks. You probably catch them on a jig, but I think that's normally a losing pattern in the wintertime. I mean, you can't, if you're allowed to fish an A-rig, this is the truth. If you're allowed to fish an A-rig from now until April and you don't, you're losing. You're going to lose the tournament to somebody. I mean, there's very rarely, you might at the end of March be able to go win up a river with a big spinnerbait. But I mean, for the guys that don't like it, the A-rig and the live scope, it's not going anywhere, and you're not gonna win very many tournaments, if any, not using it during that time period. I hate to be the bearer of bad news with it, but That's just the truth. I mean, that's how those big fish are getting caught every tournament.
Okay, 2 live scope questions.
Sure.
One, do you think that fish are getting used to live scope? Have you seen fish act negatively towards live scope? And 2, do you think that live scope is hurting the fish population at all in the lakes?
One, to answer the first question, yes. I see fish leave piles because of it. They
Really?
can feel it. Yeah, they feel it. They feel something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll pull up. I don't know if they're just feeling the boat or what, but I pull up, and it wasn't like this a couple years ago, but I'll pull up now, and I'll see some of those really big fish leave. And I know what they look like. I stare at my live scope, sadly, other than at Okeechobee. Actually, at Okeechobee still quite a bit. I stare at every cast. It's terrible. It's not something I wanted, but yeah. I mean, even if I'm fishing a spinnerbait down the bank, I'm looking at that thing. Not necessarily every time at my cast, but I'll learn something while I'm sitting there going down the bank and I'm using that live scope to see out at a pile or look up and watch one chasing it and go, oh, I need to slow that down a little. But I use it every cast. So I know what they look like. I know what the different fish usually look like, whether it's crappie or a catfish or a bass or a carp. You can tell the difference if you look at it, if you're fishing long enough with it. But for the most part, I would say I've definitely seen big fish have a negative. There is something about it. I don't know if they're just feeling it or hearing that really fast ping. Because have you ever listened to your live scope transducer?
I haven't actually.
It is beating 1,000,000 miles a minute.
Okay.
I mean,
it's got to be
really fast. Yeah. Right. Because it's got to be bouncing back and forth live. There's barely any delay with that thing. I say live scope. I use active target, but same difference. They feel that in some way because I'll pull up, shine it on them. And when you shine it on them, there's some fish that swim straight away. And they were sitting still in the pile, and you shine it on them and then they get funky and they leave.
I've been casting. We have it on our boats too, but I'll see a pile and I make a cast, and when I see my bait is falling where it's supposed to be, I'll turn the head of my trolling motor away from it.
Oh gosh!
Just so it's not just sitting there pinging on them.
Uh-huh.
I've been trying to do that. It's hard to do. I mean, it's hard.
Oh yeah, that would be
not
difficult.
Look, but
yeah,
I'm thinking, well, maybe I flash them for a little bit and then it goes away, and maybe it's going to give me an extra bite or something. I don't know.
Maybe for me, it's too important to see that fish's attitude.
Yeah.
So if I know how I need to make that bait move in order to catch them, I have to watch it. If I was doing something where, fishing where I was using live scope, I've got to watch their attitude the whole time. And to answer your second question, fish population. I mean, the only way it would hurt the population is if it's killing more fish. I don't know if it's necessarily killing more fish. I definitely think it's moving fish. I think there's less fish than ever offshore, just because of it. I think you're going to see a rise eventually in the bank again, or I don't know, maybe we're not at all, or we're just going to not. The bass fishing is going to suck, but I don't know. Yeah, I definitely think that it doesn't help. Being able to target them as good as we can now can only hurt. I mean, it's like deer hunting. The better we're all getting at hunting public land, the harder it is to kill a big buck. It's going to be the same way with catching those big fish. I mean,
well, it's not like those fish just started living out there when we got live scope. They've lived out there for years.
Right.
They're just getting
but they've been unmolested out there for years.
Right. Yeah. Now every time a boat pulls up, whether you're shining in your forward facing sonar on them or it's just the boat pulling up, they feel that pressure change. Usually that boat just runs over the top of me. Now he's stopped and he's looking at me. He's 35 feet away from me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, a big fish can only get caught so many times doing something before it decides to just go swim out in the middle or something. They're just going to sit out there in the middle. And that's going to be the next thing we do is chase fish across, chase pelagic fish across the lake, which they're already doing down at Table Rock.
Do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they chase bass like that on Table Rock already. But, the more we fish those piles and those big points that hold all those fish, I mean, you're right. It's not like, and a fish is just a fish, right? I don't want to give it a huge brain here, but I'd say that has to have some sort of negative effect on it. Yeah, but I'm not going to not use it either. As long as it's legal and everyone else is using it, I'm not going to get beat by it.
Yeah.
I'm going to continue to use it. And I do enjoy, I mean, legitimately my favorite way to catch a bass now is with a jerk. Is with a jerk bait. I like throwing an A-rig, but not even close to how much I like throwing a jerk bait, watching them and being able to just interact with those fish and get them to bite. I think it's maybe the most fun way I've ever fished, which is kind of maybe sad to say, but I love it. I love messing with them like that. So
it's like with a cat and laser pointer.
It is. It really is. I mean, you can get them coming, and best thing you do is just keep bringing it away from them, and eventually they get it. It's like the cat and mouse thing.
What do you think the percentage of fish that you see on live scope and cast to is that you actually catch? Honestly,
3%.
Yeah, thank you, because that's what I was thinking. I've heard people say like 30%, and I'm like, I don't believe that.
No.
If you don't have 30% of them follow your lure,
maybe
you're gonna have 80% of them follow it. I have a follower. Like, I don't just cast blind anymore hardly. If I'm using live scope, I don't hardly ever cast blind. I'm always looking at it, and I would say probably 80% of the time or better, I've got one looking at it, but I only catch 1% of the fish. I mean, the best day Mike and I ever had recently, we were out together live scoping, and I mean, we caught 51 fish, right? 51. But you know how many casts we made that day? You know,
hundreds,
a ton. Yeah, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. You know that, and that was an outrageous day. Most of the time, you might catch 15 fish in a day, and I'm still casting, you know, 500 times or better. I don't know. I've never counted, but it's not like it makes it super easy to just snatch them just because you've got it there. And every cast I'm catching one, not even close.
No, but the more you're out there with it, the more efficient you become with it.
Absolutely.
You're not throwing at a carp. You're not throwing at a catfish. You're not throwing at a larger than average crappie. The
crappie you'll still get tricked by, because they'll occasionally, they look like a 4-pounder. Crappie are weird. The way that they shine back, they're so tall from belly to back that they have a big shine. So they will trick you. But the way they set up is usually enough to know. Like if they're out in the middle, obviously you don't. But when they get into a pile, if there's only 2 or 3 big crappie, they do look like they will trick you. And then especially if the one's kind of aggressive and you bring a jerkbait or an A-rig through and they follow it once, you're like, oh, those are bass, you know. And then, but you'll pretty much know they don't follow it like a bass will. They're always lollygaggers. Crappie never chase it like a bass do.
What about
those
drum?
bass? Drum? I've never caught a drum on live scope, I don't think. So I usually catch them on crawfish baits. Anytime I catch a drum, it's going to be on a jig or a crankbait.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever caught any on a jerkbait.
The same day on live scope.
On a jerkbait, right?
One was on a jerkbait, one was on a swim jig.
Huh.
No kidding.
Yes. And I thought I had a freaking hog. Like jerked it by some standing timber and just comes out and follows it, and just eats it. And
a jerkbait.
On a jerkbait.
Huh. Dang. No, I've never had that.
A swim jig, same situation. I was throwing it through the standing timber.
Huh.
So
damn. No, I've caught pretty well everything else. I caught a monster catfish on Grand Lake. I was actually skipping docks, and a little trick for when they're under a little bit deep, not really shallow ones, but you can see those fish under docks too. I mean, that's just, it's an amazing tool. And I was skipping some docks on Grand Lake, and I saw this giant, and I flipped it under there and swam it in front of its face, and it fell, and it was, and I grabbed it, set the hook. I'm like, that is going to be the biggest, you know, Grand Lake bass of all time. And it was a 14-pound catfish. So, but
yeah.
But
okay, we have a real serious question here from David. He says, "Hey Austin, have you found that you need to take it easy on your hook sets due to your biceps being superior to other anglers?"
That is David Brand. That is a good buddy of ours. He travels with us to all the events. No, Dave. I've found I need to set the hook harder. I probably have the weakest hook set of all my buddies, actually. So no, I need to set it harder, Dave. But yeah, Dave's a good dude. He runs Pyro Signs. If you look on myself, Brad, Brock, and Michael's jersey. We all got Pyros on there because he is an awesome dude, runs an awesome company that supported us and really helped us through this year being able to fish the circuit. So thank you, Dave. And thanks for the bicep question, man. Make me feel good.
That's a good question. I've never used Kevin says, can you use a stinger hook on a frog in a tournament?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like the ones I've seen are like they have 2 eyelets come back to 1 hook, and then you just hook it on there. But I think fishing around all those lily pads, I don't think that would have been a good idea. And then of course one would finally get it and you'd kill it.
Yeah,
that's what I would be afraid of. Yeah. But that's a good question. Yeah, I did think about that. I don't have any frog stinger hooks just because the stuff I was throwing it around, I think you would have got it caught so much it would have been it would have been worth it.
If you actually look at it, you're only talking. I know we're in a game of inches, but there's not much.
It's not. I've never used one personally, so I just know they exist. I've never heard. You can throw a stinger on a spinner bait. Or a buzz bait, so I don't think there would be any rule violation with.
I think the better is there's modifications that you can make to a hollow body frog, bending the hooks out, widen your gap. That'll be a lot better than a stinger hook.
That's so. I found a few things with frogs. It's one of my favorite ways to fish, and I would like to think I could hook them better than I think out of 17 fish I only hooked 4, but there's a few little iterations you can do. And changes you can make. Like for one, your frog that's going to get the best hookup ratio is just a standard like pointed nose frog. Just the way that body comes in and the hooks stay out like that, like you're gonna get more bites. The one that you're gonna get, if they're being finicky, the one you're gonna get the least hookups on is definitely going to be a popping style frog because that body just stays square the whole way up and the hooks just ride along. Instead on the V body frog. Oh, I think these just died.
Oh, I can still hear you. No, I can't hear you now.
We had you just fine before.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Sorry, the headphones just died there. I was on a podcast before this, a hunting podcast, so it's been a long day with these in my ears. With the frogs, the pointed nose, you can get way better hookup ratio, and then the square bodies way less, but I just think you get more bites on the popping style frog because you can do so much more to it. It walks a little bit tighter, and it throws a lot more water. But yeah, I definitely do what you said with bending your hooks out a little bit. That's one way.
A lot of it is the plastic that the frog is made out of. Spro is a good kind of in between, but it still I think needs a little bit of work in, if you will. Mm-hmm. I don't like a brand new one if I'm going to fish a tournament. Just because
you want it a little softer.
I want something that's been chewed on a little bit.
Yeah, or you can boil it a little bit, soften it up.
One that was not good, not to bash a company, was the Guggen frog.
The Guggen. It's pretty stiff frog.
Gosh. I bought a few of those because I needed black frogs, and they're the only ones I saw at one point. And those things are hard as a rock on the top. I mean, I can't imagine a bass biting that and trying to get a hold of it. So if you're going to use that frog, if you're a fan of that company, I would definitely boil those ones.
Yeah.
Skunk frog has a really pliable frog.
That launch frog is super soft, but the hooks stick up high above the back. So you got to make sure you land belly down or you're going to be hung up. But as far as a frog that will get anything that grabs a hold of it, that launch frog, it's got a really big hook and it's stupid soft.
Have you guys seen the jackal frog? It's the jackal, starts with K. I'm really bad at names.
Yeah, I think I have one of those.
They're little, little bitty frog. Those things are sweet. I mean, they slurp those down really easily. They're still a half ounce, so you can throw them just fine. But they are tiny and they have really sharp hooks. And I just like how soft they are as well. So that's a good point with that one.
Yeah, jackal makes some good frogs. Here's a question. I realize we're talking about Lake of the Ozarks, but where can a guy catch spawning bass on Truman? Does the fish set up differently on Truman and Lake of the Ozarks? Or are you looking for similar stuff there?
Well, I mean, Lake of the Ozarks, I'm looking for docks. I'm just going into, I'm still going to go into creeks and the backs of pockets to look for them. But I think at Truman,
you're way more likely to find them just setting up next to a root system, you know, and a few foot of water. I would still try to find the most calm backwater you can, but as far as that compared to Lake the Ozarks, I mean, Lake the Ozarks, I'm always pretty well around a dock. I feel like whenever I'm looking for spawning fish, just they love to spawn just on either side where the sun still reaches down on either side of a dock walkway. That's on Lake the Ozarks. That's always where I find them, or right underneath a cable. They seem to think that cable somehow provides them cover, and so if you'll find them where there's nothing but a cable running out of the water, not even in the water, over the top of the water, they'll spawn right underneath it. At Truman, I'd say I would stick to just trying to find them around those trees, shallow trees. But I haven't done a lot of bed fishing on Truman. I wouldn't be the guy to really ask. But Lake of the Ozarks, I've done quite a bit. I love to bed fish. That's one of my favorite ways. I just like looking at them, whether it's on the live scope or it's on the bed. I love messing with them. So
yeah, it's fun. We don't get a good bed fishing experience.
Usually it's
around
all
here.
blown out in mud.
Yeah, and we got a lot of grass in these lakes. It's a little bit different. And of course, we're fishing out of John boats most of the time, so we don't have power poles and spot locks kind of iffy. But I've been on Lake of the Ozarks a couple times when they were spawning, and it's pretty sweet to see them and just pitch to them and watch them react. It's a lot of fun. It's really fun because it's clean. It's just rocks,
right?
You know,
you just got to find the fish. See a little
set up on them,
disc out there, and
and you can see them. It's
well, I mean, I would say, I guess at Truman, which there's so much of it that this might not be helpful, but on Lake of the Ozarks, I'm always looking for pea gravel whenever I'm looking for spawning fish. If I can find that softer pea gravel, they're on that stuff. So if I were at Truman looking for it, that'd be the same thing. Now at Truman, there's just a ton of it. I feel like it's everywhere. So maybe that's not as helpful. But if you found a pea gravel pocket with stumps in it, I'd say that's definitely a starting point at least. But yeah, Lake of the Ozarks is fun. I mean, it's hard. It creates another challenge having those obstacles like the docks in the way. But I think it kind of protects a lot of the fish too. I mean, I'm happy they're there because otherwise all these fish would get picked off a lot easier.
That's what keeps that lake so good is the pleasure boat traffic in the summer, and then all the docks. They've got a place to hide at all times, and then they don't get as much pressure, 6 months out of the year.
Oh yeah. I might get berated for saying this, but man, I almost wish they would stop summer fishing at all in that lake. I don't get me wrong, I've fished plenty of them and I loved fishing them, taking my dad down there and fishing them, but gosh, it was every tournament I was at. And I think anybody that's been down there for a summer tournament can attest to this. There's so many fish that die. So many 5-pounders I see dead in a summer event. Man, it's hard to watch.
I think that's a lot of lakes though, south of the central United States. I mean, it doesn't matter what lake you're on, what you do to your fish, but a rough boat ride, bad
hot water,
live well systems, bad fish care.
Yeah.
It's all part of it. And
right.
I'm with you. You don't see many dead fish come in January, February, March.
It happens around here. It happens around here.
Oh, absolutely.
We do the Wednesday nighters in this little local lake, and I've had a couple people come up to me at the boat ramp later in the week and say they fished Thursday morning and there were dead fish floating
everywhere.
Yep. It's sad. And that's a small lake.
For the summer, you're talking about
Wednesday nighters, like May through like August.
Yeah, well, and so I had a comment. I'd made a post earlier this month about that. It was about A-rig season, right? And what's your thoughts on it? And a couple guys commented on it. And one of them said, well, I think it kills a lot of fish. And then another guy actually commented underneath it exactly what I was thinking. He goes, that doesn't kill any fish compared to the summer. I don't think A-rigs and live scope kill a fraction of the fish that die over the summer in people's live wells. So I think fish care needs to be a bigger penalty or something for fish dying in those events in the summertime. Like you can't weigh them or something. That would save so many more fish's lives because people would have to go get ice. They would have to take better care of their fish, make sure their aerators worked. I mean, I want to preserve this lake of the Ozarks as long as I can. I love it. And there's a lot of big fish. And I know it is better off than a lot of lakes because of the pleasure boats and the docks, but still seeing that every time. I think if they had a stricter penalty, you might save more fish's lives.
Yeah, I agree. It's hard on the fish. It's just really, really hard on the fish. Stephanie wants to know, do you have a preferred brand of rods?
I do. Yep. You see right here, FX Custom Rods. I started out here right in Columbia, Missouri, and now they're nationwide. I think they're out of Alabama now, but yeah, or no, Georgia, sorry. But FX Custom Rods, they've really taken the lake by storm. I don't know if you guys use any, or have you seen them at all?
No, but I know Harlan was talking about them.
Yeah, man, Harlan and I pretty much, we were both living in Columbia at the time and got on with FX and started fishing them and fell in love with them then. And now I've gotten to watch them grow, and it's pretty cool down on Lake of the Ozarks, walking around in the morning before a tournament. I mean, I feel like I walk around and see them on half or more of the boats down there before the tournament. And that's been really cool. Awesome to see the growth of that. And they got them right there at Baitworks as well. You can pick up a rod from Baitworks, and if I were to suggest any rod right now for anybody, I mean, we're dead in the center of jerkbait and A-rig season. And if you're looking for one, the 6.6 medium, I'm shorter, so I love that shorter rod, but I think taller people can use it too. But that 6.6 medium is a dynamite rod. We caught, and I quoted this, we caught 51 fish, like I told you, on jerkbait a couple weeks ago. We did not lose a single one on that rod. It is made perfectly for a jerkbait. That's all it's designed to do is throw a jerkbait, and it does a really, really good job at it. So if anybody's looking for one, the 6.6 medium is a dynamite jerkbait rod.
I like it. I mean, I've got a 6.8 jerkbait rod. I've also got a 7-foot, and I got a 7-foot too. Actually, my 7-foot too is a cranking rod. I just kind of started using it for jerkbaits the last couple of years, and it does a good job. But that 6'8", man, it's so light in your hand. You can fish it all day. I mean, because you're doing a lot of, you're twitching a lot. If you got a heavy rod that you're fighting,
or even a longer rod. I mean, you're having to almost fight it to keep it above the water, and it's just a little bit longer and a little heavier, that short rod. And you don't lose enough in casting distance, in my opinion. I mean, I can bomb, like I said, it's designed to do it. It bombs a 110 like nobody's business, as far as you need to cast it on 10-pound tests. So I like a shorter rod for sure.
What's your jerkbait of choice? Do you have a couple different brands that you go through, or do you?
I do. I don't just throw a 110. There was a while where I did, and I would say a jerkbait's probably, if you asked anybody, like, that's my number one tool. I get kind of made fun of for it, because like I caught a few on Okeechobee just to see if I could on live scope, just messing around and catching them. But like, I love throwing a jerkbait. It's probably my number one tool. And I would say for the most part, I'm throwing a 110 or a 110 plus one. On Lake of the Ozarks, that plus one is hard to beat. It can come through brush really good. So it's a killer jerkbait. But I have been throwing the 6 cents jerkbait, the Provoke, and I was really surprised in what it does. It's got a way, way wider arc back and forth when you twitch that thing. It's a little more buoyant. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I haven't tried weighting one down yet, but if I'm throwing it over shallow brush, I'm tapping that thing, and it is so much more erratic than your 110. So that's definitely one. And in dirty water, I have the Spro mix stick. I have it in that purple back with the yellow sides on it, and I throw the heck out of that. Like, over all of the jerkbaits in dirtier, a little bit more stained water, I'm throwing that Spro. I just got so much confidence in it. It's loud, and it's got huge loud rattles in it, and it's very a loud color. So I do throw 3 different jerkbaits. Yeah.
Is that PM Twilight, or is it a different color? The Spro.
I think it's actually what they called it, Table Rock Shad, but it's like a flat yellow.
Yeah.
It's not like other Table Rock Shads that are, like a little more fluorescent yellow. Like Table Rock Shad in Division 110 is like a kind of a creamy purple, with a little bit of green on the bottom and some purple on top. Now, the Table Rock Shad and the Spro mix stick is like deep purple on the top and a flat school bus yellow on the side.
Okay.
But it's really good in the dirtier water. Like they don't, because they'll still suspend in dirty water. They don't always want to be on the bottom, or eating a red crankbait or eating a spinner bait. So that jerk bait can still be a tool even in dirty water. People just don't do it very often. And that bright color like that just shocks them as it comes by.
Clown.
You just had a video up, right? That you just went and caught fish dirty.
Yeah,
water.
that's what I was just getting ready to say. That clown's a sleeper color in that dirty water too.
Clown's a sleeper color all around.
It is, yes, sir.
That's one of the top colors I've ever thrown.
Yeah, you're talking about the Vision 110, that Western Clown. That's a pretty. I personally, if somebody was gonna, what if somebody was gonna buy 3 Vision 110 colors? I'd say Clown, Pro Blue, and
Stain Reaction.
I don't know, maybe Stain Reaction, but you almost got to do 5 almost because there's colors.
I could go. Let me pick my 3. If I could only have one, it would probably be French, Sexy French Pearl. That would be it. French Pearl. If I only had one, because I can throw that in. I mean, you kind of got to look at like conditions wise. Like, what do you need them for different conditions? For stained water, or let's just go overcast versus sunny. For overcast days, let's go clear water in general. Overcast.
3-foot visibility, 4-foot visibility water.
Yeah, or better. Yeah. Let's go 3 or 4, or maybe a little bit better, something like that.
Okay.
But in any of that, in any case, in overcast skies, you're going to need like a flatter color, just something that they can pick up on in that kind of overcast nastiness, not something flashy. So your Sexy French Pearl or just French Pearl is a great option for those overcast skies. And French Pearl is a great dirty water color too, because it's just bright white and it just shocks. And then I could do one of those 2 colors and then do something like a Tennessee shad, and those should be my 2 colors, because that Tennessee has a lot of shine to it, and it's still pretty natural, so you can fish it in clear water or dirty water, but it's got a lot of shine. If I had to pick a third, I'd probably pick Clown, just because I think you can, anytime there's sun, you can throw that Clown and they will bite it. And that red head in that dirtier water is pretty sweet.
Yeah.
So you've spent a lot of time with active target, forward-facing sonar. Is there a jerk bait that shows up better, or a color that shows up better?
No, I've never seen a color show up better. Okay. I do see them flash though. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I've seen a Clown.
Have you thrown a Rogue? Have you thrown a Rogue and watched it?
Nope.
Buy a Smithwick Rogue and throw it and look at it.
I mean, I don't need to buy them. I've got a box of Rogues, but I haven't. I mean, it's sad to say I haven't thrown a Rogue in a lot.
Most people haven't, but try it. Let me know what you think about it as far as the.
What have you seen? I want to know what you've seen.
It's bright.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know.
So it does show up better.
So the one that I was throwing was like a chrome plated Rogue.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
That's why. I guarantee you that's why it's the chrome.
It flashed quite a bit more than some of the other ones I was throwing.
Yeah, it was interesting. I saw that this year especially when I switched to Lowrance ones. I really love the Lowrance units, and I don't know if the Garmin does the same thing, but I'm watching every once in a while I'll twitch like one that's got some shine to it or some chrome on it, and it will glow on my sonar. And I was trying to figure out why it does that. I don't know how it's picking that flash up, but I swear it flashes more than your Sexy French Pearl, just a French Pearl.
I think it's that chrome. It's that chrome.
What
is it picking up?
Well, I was gonna say it doesn't make any sense, because it's not picking up reflections of light, it's picking up hardness of bait, because it's sonar, it's not.
Well, maybe something about the paint versus
the paint's more metallic. Well, maybe you're right then. Maybe it is the paint.
Right.
I guess that might be it, because that chrome being more metallic, maybe it's picking up that it's harder.
Or it could be the shape of the bait, reflecting more. Obviously the wider action could come into play too.
Well, if it's sitting like this,
if it's a flatter sided
like this.
Yeah, but what I'm seeing isn't necessarily just like a different size of bait. I'm talking like it'll like glow.
It's sitting still.
It'll like burn hot for a second.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I don't know. But that's a really interesting question, actually. Now I'm going to have to go out and throw every one of my jerk baits I have to find out how the differences are.
Huh. Yeah, there's some of them that flash more than others. I did a video where I think I went through like 12 different baits and I threw them all out on live scope just to see how deep they ran. And the Rogue had a really solid, bright return, and it's the oldest jerkbait out there. It's way pre live scope or forward facing sonar, but it had a little. It seemed like it had a nice little glow compared to some of the other ones. The Megabass has a pretty good glow too.
Yeah, that's the one I've undoubtedly fished the most on live scope, and I don't ever have a problem seeing it. The only time we call it prestige mode is whenever it's windy out. I mean, it's hard on everybody whenever it gets like that. But it's man, fishing jerkbait for I think you can catch. I think what people don't realize is I have a jerkbait on the front of my boat pretty much 12 months out of the year now, because I mean, even in the summertime, if you've got a school of fish, you could have a +1 on. And just when those fish are doing something crazy or follow your bait back or something like that, you can throw that out there and catch them. I mean, I can catch a fish 12 out of 12 months on a jerkbait, and you can dang near win a tournament 12 out of 12 months on a jerkbait. Maybe not in the summer. That would be about it. Would be the only time. But post spawn, you can snatch them. In the fall, you can snatch them all fall long. Like obviously the winter and the early spring are great times, but that's all I did on Truman. Now, I didn't do well in the final day, but that Truman on Toyota, the Toyota series, all I did was throw a jerkbait over brush piles.
Really?
And that was in the fall. Yeah. Everyone else is throwing worms into brush piles. And I could catch a few doing that, but I got way more because I was doing something different. I was just throwing a jerkbait over those brush piles, and the water was just clear enough for him to see it. I was throwing that school bus color.
How far above those brush piles were you throwing that?
I mean, some of the stuff I was fishing, I had to twitch like this.
Okay.
Like I was fishing on top of flats and stuff like that, just because they were coming up there to feed in the morning, and there'd be stumps and stuff like that up there, and I'd throw it. But I couldn't get him to bite like a fluke or a spook on the surface, even though it was only, a couple of feet deep. I couldn't get him to bite that. I could only get him to bite a jerkbait, and I would have to throw that jerkbait up there and go like this with it over the top. And some of them I'd catch them in 15. I mean, they were
coming out of the brush pile to eat it, not.
Yeah.
You weren't running it into the brush pile on purpose.
No. Oh, is that what you're asking? Like how far over the top? Yeah, I always try to get as close as I can.
Right.
Yeah, they were coming clean out of it. There was plenty of fish in those piles. I mean, that's how it all got won. Like the winner, every one of the guys in the top 10 caught them. Well, maybe I shouldn't say out of the top 10, but I know the top 3, they all caught them out of brush on jigs and worms and that kind of deal. But I was having less success doing that. I felt a lot more confident working them with a jerkbait.
I would say that makes so much sense, because if there's one bait that people put away, or two baits, during the warm period, it's an Alabama rig for sure, and then a jerkbait. Nobody's fishing it. They're seeing it a lot in the winter, but they're not seeing it when the water's like 60 degrees.
There wasn't not another person out there throwing a jerkbait over those piles.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why they wouldn't bite it. I mean, I work it faster. That was it. Maybe a little more erratic, but I mean, they still eat a shad and fall. That's what they do all fall long. So, yeah, you can catch them a lot better than you think. Everybody puts it away and picks up a topwater and a worm or a flipping jig, but you can go to work on them because no one else is with it.
Were you able to catch them later in the day doing that too, or was that just the first thing in the morning?
No, I caught them all day doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't find that pattern until I was fishing a worm and going around and doing all that on Truman for a couple of days. And then I caught one. It was really windy, and I was like, I need a different way to catch one. And I went out to a windy point, caught one on a jerkbait, and I was like, that's cool. And then I ran into a pocket just to see if I could catch one. Now that then it got me spinning, because I'm like, wait a second, if I can catch one on a jerkbait, let's try a pile. Caught one over a pile. I was like, I could win this now. Like that was my first thought was, yep, okay, I could win that. And I ended up having a good first day, 15 and 13. And then the last day I had a horrific day, but they just weren't getting a hold of it very good on the final day. They weren't committing, but you could put a hurting on them in the fall doing that.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. It's like that first time you go rig fishing, like late September or whatever around here. And nobody's been throwing it at all.
Right.
It's stupid.
Yeah,
It's
like
so fun.
they're all still sitting in brush piles. You know, everyone else is flipping a worm in there, and you got this, you know, bait ball coming by and snatching them. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's how I feel about, not right now, but a little earlier in the wintertime. If you're one of the first guys to really start throwing around that A-rig on the right stuff, you can have some of the most silly days you've ever had. But because the fish aren't in the fall and into the winter, they don't set up in those piles as good as everyone thinks. It's not until late winter that they get in there. So when they start to, like in January, when they finally start to really get in those piles good, that's whenever I think the best fishing on Lake of the Ozarks is. I'd say we're right at it right now. Is probably going to be the best fishing you could see the lake be, other than the middle of the summer.
Okay. Ron says he came in late. Assume you served. Where did you serve? And thankful for your service.
Yeah. So straight out of high school, I graduated a little early from high school and jumped in the Marine Corps. Awesome decision, and also a little bit of a crazy decision in the end. But I was a 331 machine gunner, a part of a combined NA armor unit and a heavy weapons platoon or heavy weapons company. So did that, and my unit was 323 out of Springfield, Missouri. So people might know a few guys that served down there. So
okay,
yep, that was what I did. Did that, and then got done with Marine Corps and went to college at Mizzou.
Man, I was so close to jumping in, man. But I didn't, and I waited too long, and I wish I would have, because I feel like, honestly, every citizen should serve at least a year in some sort of armed service. Yeah. I know that's how they do it, and there's some countries where they do it.
Yeah,
I think like Israel, they do that. I think it's 2 years over there.
There might even be like, there's some other countries that do it. I don't think it's Germany, France, maybe some other countries do that, where it's like a minimum of 2 years where you serve, just to kind of get some discipline. I mean, I was kind of a little shithead, growing up, so it was good for me. I needed some discipline, and that was a really good way for me to get it. So taught me a lot. I can kind of take some of those values now into fishing, just as far as, your work ethic and stuff like that, and being able to kind of adapt. I feel like some of those things really do help me out, and definitely gave me a different perspective on life and just, everything really. So coming back to college was a little bit of a shock, though. I will say that, because I come back to a bunch of bratty kids that, just have these dramatic little problems. And I was like, what am I doing here? But anyway.
Well, those problems that you would have had 4 years prior.
Yeah, exactly.
That don't seem like problems anymore, right?
Right. And that was what was it was a little bit of a shell shock coming back. I think that's probably what a lot of people deal with, as far as they're just frustrated by society when you come back from serving, and you kind of see what everybody else is complaining about, and then you've kind of seen what the rest of the world's dealing with, and you're kind of like, man, that's not a real problem. But anyway, I agree. I think it would be good for a lot of young people to join and do something like that, so that just get a little bit more grounding. So.
Yeah, well, like the worst problem somebody's had is the worst problem that they've had. It could be
I've had that
exact shoestring broke that morning. That's
your worst day is somebody's best day.
Right. I mean,
but your worst day to you is the worst day you've ever had. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, and so even though somebody else's worst day is probably a lot worse, but you can't really empathize any further than your worst day. So
true. Well said. So you do a lot of hunting, right?
I do. Yep.
Yeah.
I just got off a hunting podcast just before this one.
Yeah. How'd that go? Is it a good time?
Yeah. Truth from the Stand. Clint Campbell. He's an awesome guy, and we talked for way too long about little white goats, or white and brown goats. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
When you've been out in the woods, have you ever ran across any any Sasquatch footprints, Sasquatch sightings? Anybody that's had a Sasquatch sighting? Or
no, I've never seen a Sasquatch. I like like I was telling you guys, I've seen a couple mountain lions, stuff like that, but nothing as scary as a Sasquatch.
Well, I've been hunting in Missouri a long time, and I've never encountered a mountain lion. So
really,
so you did have an encounter with a mountain lion though?
Yeah, I've had two that were sightings, and then other ones that I've seen a lot of tracks, and I've seen deer hung up in tree, pulled up into trees and stuff like that. I think I was hunting an area that maybe had a plethora of them. It was probably a bad idea to be in there, but saw one. I had a deer on my back. I was carrying out. It was middle of the night. I was doing it alone and had one kind of following me, and I was shining him with a light, and I could see him. Yep. So
you could see him.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You didn't mention a while ago that that was in the dark.
It was at like 1 a.m.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was not ideal. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So I'd cut this whole deer up, and I actually used it was my old Marine Corps main pack, and I'd cut this deer up and thrown it into my main pack. So I just had it all confined into that. And I was walking up this big hill, and I heard something next to me, and I shine my light over there, and I see two cat eyes. And I was hoping it was just going to be a bobcat, but it walked out of my light. And as it was walking out, I saw his tail that was like 2.5 foot long. I was like, oh no, that's not a good thing. So that was my first encounter. And then I was hunting with my brother on the same property, and I was sitting on one ridge, and he was sitting on the ground on the other ridge, and he had it attacking. I guess it was attacking something right in front of him. And he come running to me and climbed into my stand underneath me. He was freaking out. I was like, I got to get out of here. And he dropped like all his arrows. We were bow hunting, and his arrows were all out of his quiver, and he had just ran as fast as he could to get away from, I don't know if it was killing a coyote. I can't remember, or a rabbit or something like that, but I guess it was killing something right in front of him when he was on the ground. So pretty scary.
He's seeing what he could become.
Yeah, he was afraid of heights before that happened. That's why he was sitting on the ground, and now he's in the tree.
The funny thing is he's a big muscle bound dude. Like he's 6'3". He's 6'3" and just 230 of muscle, and he's just running through the woods as hard as he can, trying to get away from this thing. And it was pretty funny to watch. But he had straight fear in his eyes coming up to my tree.
Did you tell him once he got to your tree that cats can climb trees?
Yeah, I don't know what he thought he was going to do getting into my tree with me, but
now that it's got a 2-for-1 meal in that tree.
Yeah, no kidding. Maybe we could have fought it off together. I'd let him try to fight it first. But.
We got a winner.
Who got it?
Tom Mix.
Tom Mix.
Congratulations, Tom. Yep. Tom is a longtime viewer of the live stream, so good to see a regular win.
Good.
Shoot me your shipping information, Tom. Facebook, Instagram, whatever, and I'll get it over to Joey, and we'll get you taken care of.
It was amazing all that time, and then there was 2 of them back to back.
Oh, Seth was right behind him.
Sorry, Seth.
We had 17. A bunch of people guessed 17.
I almost said 17 earlier. That was
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, it was almost the number I said.
Well, somebody hit that like really early, and then they hit about every.
We've had it on the first guess, and we've had it where it's taken hours.
Yeah, that first guess, we thought that was an inside job somehow.
Yeah, pretty sure it was.
Yeah, had to be.
Well, I didn't tell anybody. I swear.
So Tom,
what's in the package there?
What's that?
What's all in the Crocagator care package?
I don't know. It'll be a surprise. She usually puts some jigs in there. I hope she put some beaver bugs in there. The people that have watched this stream, they know how much I like the beaver bug.
Beaver bugs and tubes.
I always have a beaver bug. I got a beaver bug and package of beaver bugs in my wallet, in my upstairs.
Pouch too.
Yeah, I'm just, you never know when you're going to use a beaver bug. It's just a really good bait. It's one of my favorites.
It is slick on a little shaky head.
Yep.
I mean, there's a reason Jim Dill's always doing good in those tough tournaments, because he's throwing that and getting bites. I mean, that's like a testament to that thing right there.
Yeah, it's 100%, man. Right now, when it's tough and cold water, it's the thing to throw.
Yeah.
There's Joey right there. Phil's down in Florida right now, and he's wondering how you were using your live scope in the shallow water.
So I mean, where I was catching him on a jerk bait, I was actually in that canal where it was a little deeper.
Okay.
But But to answer his question, I did use it a little bit in some different scenarios where I did find some deeper mats. It was it felt kind of like I was fishing docks at home, but I would see those deeper mats and I could flip. I would just set my settings were a lot different, right? They weren't so stretched out. I only had my setting on 8 foot deep, and I think I had it maybe 40 foot or 30 foot out. So I had a lot better picture of just right in front of me because I was never casting very far using that. But you could use live scope to kind of see where fish were like tucked under mats, and you could just flip to them, and you could actually watch. You could flip your bait in, and I guess you can't see my hand. You could flip your bait in and just have it sling right by them, and you'd watch fish follow it down to the bottom on live scope, and you could watch them. I mean, you could watch them pick it up. They weren't really doing it that well, but you could target fish doing that.
Okay.
And you could see stuff that you wouldn't see as well from the surface, or stuff you wouldn't notice. Like sometimes there'd be a hyacinth mat, and then there would be some reeds in there, but everything would be so tall on the top of that you couldn't really tell. You could look under there with your live scope and see where the reeds came down, and that's likely where the fish is going to sit. If the hyacinth mat's all the same, and then you got a spot where there's a clump of reeds in there, he's going to be sitting right there next to that clump of reeds. And so you could see under that hyacinth mat and see where the clump of reeds came down and pitch to that. If you couldn't see it on the surface, because sometimes you can't, because I don't know if you've seen some of that where it's so overgrown on the top, you can't really tell what's all in there. But that was kind of something I was trying to key in on when it was nastier out, because they do get under those. But once it gets sunny, it's like those fish don't even care about the mats. But that's pretty well. I did catch a couple on a chatterbait using live scope as well. So I caught one on a chatterbait, and I was fishing over some emergent grass, kind of out in an open bay, and was reeling over the top of that and watched them chase it and caught one. Well, then I threw over there a couple more times and didn't catch another one. And I took a little Cinco on an 1/8 ounce weight and cast it out there and watched it fall and watched one bite it. So you can definitely use live scope out in those more open areas where you're fishing emergent grass or submergent grass. You can catch them using live scope as well. So
I saw a guy a couple years ago on a local lake, and this was in about this time of the year. It was like, late winter, almost early pre-spawn, and he was punching rope grass, which will kind of tell you where I'm talking about, what lake. But he was using live scope, really shallow, and looking into there's this weird kind of weed. It's like a woody type of weed that grows around here. So it's not coontail milfoil, but it's woody. It's like stock.
Yeah,
more stems. So it's got voids in it and stuff. And he was using his forward facing sonar to kind of look into these mats, and sounds like the same thing you're doing, where you could see the ideal spot, the high percentage area where the stuff was more like kind of compressed in a little area.
Well, it's the same thing. It'd be like there's a big flat mat. Let's take this. This is all I was seeing on live scope. There'd be a big flat mat, and then right in the middle of the mat, but let's say it's like back here, right in the middle of the mat, there'd just be a couple of cattails, or just like really stemmy objects that were coming down. Everything else was just surface level, and then you'd have your one thing, and they would be posted up right next to that stemmy object. Every time you could see it right to it.
So that made you just that much, super efficient. You're just making 2 flips and then you're moving on or whatever.
Right. But I mean, I wish that I wish I could confirm that a little bit better to answer his question. I assume it only worked a couple of times for me, so I wouldn't say that I'm an expert at using my live scope in the grass, but that's how I used it anyway.
Okay.
I think that shallow water is underutilized for live scope. Everybody always said it was like 8 foot and deeper, but I've had some success with some pretty shallow stuff.
I'll have a video coming out probably. It might not be this week, but it's going to be next week, because I caught like 40 fish on a jerkbait, and a lot of those fish were in 4 foot of water, and I was watching them with my live scope, right off the side of grass, right off the side of a grass line, and they were there. And it was one of those days where I really didn't need my live scope because they were biting so good, and there was such a big school, but it was still cool to watch them hit that. I was hitting the jerkbait on the bottom of the lake, and they were sucking it in. It was cool to see it all go down right there. But
yeah, I mean,
you can definitely use it for 5 foot
at
of water.
it. You might as well look at it and learn something from it.
Yeah.
You're only going to learn by looking at it, I think. But yeah, you can. It is underutilized in shallow water. I mean, I can see them under docks in the fall when I'm flipping. I can still see a bass under there. It's not like that ability goes away. I can scan under a shallow dock and see a fish under there.
Mm-hmm.
Or watch when, you can flip under there or skip your jig way up under a dock and watch it fall. A lot of times you'll watch that fish who was sitting right underneath the float. You might not be able to see him until you skip that jig in there, but you can watch that fish come off that float and come down and get your jig.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I do that every cast in the fall. I really don't, but occasionally I will, just to like know that there's fish in the area kind of deal.
Yeah. I was talking about like shallow flat in the fall, way in the backs of these creeks. Yeah. And you're not necessarily looking for fish, but you're looking for a stump or something it's dirtier water that you can't see. You're bombing long casts, and there it is at 100 feet. You can see something out there.
Yeah.
And more times than not, there's going to be a fish around that.
Yeah, keeps you from having to fan cast. There's a lake around here that has a bunch of docks, but you can't fish within 10 feet of the dock. It's the Lake Rules.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's torture, but
and it's like Lake of the Ozarks on the front end of it. Dock.
There's quite a few docks, but I've always wondered. I'm like, man, I bet every fish in the lake is underneath those docks.
Absolutely.
And they are. When I got live scope, I started looking underneath those docks.
There's
so many fish under those docks.
You can't get your boat within 10 feet, or you
can't cast within 10 feet of the dock.
Oh my gosh.
And they're loaded up under there. It's like,
they ought to have one day a year where you can just go fishing.
I know. They should.
It is
kids fishing day.
It's after something. Sunset, about 30 minutes after sunset. You can fish all the docks.
Oh yeah,
nobody can see you.
Yeah,
bad idea.
They're under there for sure. Let's hit a couple more questions, man, and we'll shut this sucker down, man. I know you've been talking all night long. Andy says, has anyone ever heard of the Red One Systems punching weight? I've never heard of that.
Mm-hmm. Nope,
it's a new one to me.
Sorry, Andy.
And then what is your guy's favorite Alabama rig to throw? What about you, Austin?
I like the 6 cents one. It's just got better components, and it's not that expensive. There's other ones that are really good. Your Hog Farmer, your Picasso. There's nothing wrong with the umbrella, but I mean, I've had my fair share of them where the arm just pops out of it right out of the bag. So you're kind of trusting a really cheap product right out of the bag, I think, with those. And I've caught a lot of them in tournaments on the umbrella, but I've had it where the arm pops right out of the head of that thing right when they come out of the bag, or they're sitting in the bag already broken. You're like, how am I trusting, in a $50,000 tournament, what am I doing, throwing this thing? So those 6 cents ones, they've just got quality snaps and quality arms. And I've really come to like that one quite a bit. They have 2 different sizes. I usually go with the smaller size on that, but just the same way with the Flash Mob Junior was a little bit smaller, but yeah.
What kind of heads, like what weight heads, size hooks, swim baits, that kind of thing do you use?
Well, the size of the hook definitely depends on the swim bait that I'm using, but I want to get, I don't like a big long shank hook with those, because I want them to, I think it impedes the action. So I'm throwing, when the fish are really lethargic, I'm going down to an 1/8. And then I don't like to, if I'm fishing deep, I'd rather fish with a little bit heavier so I can cover more water. But, the faster the fish are willing to move, the heavier I'm going to keep my bait. And definitely the deeper I fish, the heavier my bait. So I'll go to like quarters down to 1/8. So I pretty much keep it that simple. Quarters, if I'm fishing deep water, like Table Rock, a lot of times I'll fish quarters. And then like the Ozarks, a lot of times I'm fishing shallow where I want to be able to keep that bait up above them a little bit better. I'm going to use an 1/8 ounce. And along with that, I use a variety of heads. Now I have been going just to the whole 6 cents package, but in the past, another good head is like a Picasso head, just a 3/0 hook on it. Same way with the 6 cents head. Just I like to have something that looks really real I don't know how much it matters. I mean, I've caught them on just the lead heads, don't get me wrong, but I think the more these fish see them, the more you want your stuff realistic. So I use a painted head with an eyeball, swim bait, kind of depending on what I want. I think I get the most lift out of something like a Kitech. If I want to fish a little faster, I'll go to something like the 6 Sense Divine one, and I'll throw that on the back of, because I think it's got a little bit less of a wobble, a little bit tighter wobble, and I'll fish that on my heavier heads if I'm fishing faster with it. So that's kind of my setups I throw.
Okay. Yeah.
20, 25 pound fluoro?
Just 20. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't even go with a crazy rod and reel. Like, I think that everyone's kind of come back off of that. I think we used to think you needed a deep sea reel and deep sea rod. And I mean, I just have a regular, either a Daiwa Tatula SV, or really, I think I've been actually using the Tatula 150. It's a little bit bigger handle on it. It holds a little bit deeper with line, but I mean, I'm not making casts past 100 feet ever.
Yeah.
Never. I have no reason to try to bomb that thing out there anymore. I'm making a cast just long enough to, get behind that brush pile or that rock pile and reel it over it. So I think the days of just bombing it and winding it are pretty well over. And I use a FX 7.7 medium heavy. I don't even use a heavy rod. I like the medium heavy because I think that allows the fish to get it a little bit better before I'm jerking on them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using a 7.7 medium heavy FX rod, pretty much a standard reel with 20-pound test.
What are you starting out with, like the lengths of swim baits? A 3.3, 3.8, or does that vary throughout the winter?
It is. You get a lot more lift out of the 3.8. You can keep it up and fish it way slower with a 3.8. With the 3.3s, it's a little bit faster, but you could get down to a smaller head size if you wanted to. For table rock, I pretty much only throw a 3.3. And like the Ozarks, I pretty well just throw a 3.8. It would take a lot for me to go down to the 3.3. The only thing I might do one thing I do on table rock that I don't do on like the Ozarks is I do take the blades off. Not every time, but I take the blades off a lot of times for fishing table rock. Just because of the clarity. I don't ever do it on like the Ozarks. I don't think it's necessary. But with the clarity, sometimes I think that they just commit to it better without a bunch of blades flashing on it.
Yeah, so, I saw that. I fished with Pete Winters one day in a BFL, and it was a February tournament. He was live scoping with an A-rig over treetops, just catching spots. And he had 2 A-rigs, one with blades, one without blades. And
that's what I do.
He said they prefer one over the other depending on the day. And you just have to kind of throw them both. But I thought it was funny because he had straight up white braid. Like the braid was totally faded out. All the green and stuff was gone. It was like this bright white braid.
Yeah.
And
then he's worried about the other stuff.
Yeah. And he's making a long cast and he's scoping them. And it's like they didn't see I don't know. It amazed me that the braid didn't matter.
Don't know. I don't personally know if I get more bites with braid or fluoro. I like casting the fluoro better. I've had braid dang near. Well, I've had to take the rod right out of my hand, when you're throwing something big and heavy like that. But I like the fluorocarbon. If it gets me one more bite, I might as well throw it. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. With the blades versus not blades, I think most of the time I have both of them on there. If it's slick calm, on table rock, I always go to the no blades. Or if it's overcast, I'll go to no blades. But if it's like windy and sunny, I always go with the blades there. But they're a little more finicky on that lake. I mean, like the Ozarks are pretty well just, whether it's sunny, cloudy, windy or not, I'm just throwing the blades on there because I think with the clarity, they don't get as good a look at it. Even in the clearest water we have here, they don't get nearly the look at it they do on table rock.
Yeah.
So that's just my little twist I always do is for table rock, having those 2 combos. And I'll have a heavier, if I have 2 A-rigs on my boat on like the Ozarks, the big difference, I'll either do different colors or I'll do different weight heads to try to see if they want it faster. Because you can only, so let's say you have 1/8 ounce on, and you're reeling it by them and they're not committing to it because maybe it's coming by too slow and there's not enough of the cat and mouse. So you can throw ones with 1/4 ounce heads and kind of rip it by them. And a lot of times in that instance, there is instances where they will all of a sudden come out at it like 1,000,000 miles an hour.
Really?
Come get it. Yeah. So that's why I would have the two different. I might have everything the same except for the heads. So that way I can keep it down there and reel it faster over their head. Or vice versa. You know, say I was on the 1/4 ounce and I just feel like they're not committing to it. I might throw the 1/8 ounce one out there. And at that little bit slower presentation, I can keep it just floating, hovering a little bit longer over their head. They might come get it. So just let the fish kind of tell me when I'm watching them.
Isn't that crazy? Like even in cold water, like 41, 42 degree water, that a bass can move as fast as you ever think it can move.
I'll say this about jerkbait fishing. I don't slow down.
Okay.
Ever. I don't even hardly pause that thing.
I believe it. I mean, I believe it. That's one of the most eye-opening things that I've noticed with live scope is how fast a fish. It doesn't matter the water temperature. If a fish wants your bait, he's going to come out there.
If they want it, you're going after active fish. I mean, very rarely am I slowing down for one. A lot of times you'll never catch that fish anyway if you slow down. You need that fish coming. You need to get it thinking that bait's going to get away. And I keep it moving.
Gotcha.
Like twitch, like that fast.
Really?
Yeah, all day.
Huh.
Like it's very rare. Maybe once or twice over the top of the pile, I'll just leave it for a second, but it ain't long.
Yeah, the days before live scope when you're sitting there watching it for 15, 20, 30 seconds.
I can't believe we did that. I can't believe we did that. I mean, I caught fish every once in a while doing that, right? I mean, so did you guys, I'm sure. Like,
absolutely.
Wait 15 seconds, and then you go, oh my gosh, I got one. But how long? He probably had it the whole time. I don't know. I have enough piles that I'm going to fish that day that I'm going to fish for those active fish that want to bite my bait and then keep moving.
Yeah.
I do not want to sit there and try to work fish forever, you know, or a group of fish on a brush pile that don't want to bite.
Right.
I'll work it fast. I mean, occasionally you stop it. I'm not saying I don't stop it, but the only time I'm stopping it is when one's coming 1,000,000 miles an hour and I want to make it where, you know, he's coming so fast he wouldn't even be able to stop if he wanted to, and he runs right into it. You know, that's the time I'm stopping it. So
Kevin says, do you three use live scope more to find where fish are or where they aren't? I mean, both for me.
Yeah.
What I've had to learn on that one, Kevin, is just because I don't see fish there doesn't mean they're not there.
Correct.
That's hard. That was hard for me to, once you get live scope and you get that first bite on live scope and you see everything, your mentality is, oh, if I don't see a fish, they're not there.
Yeah.
But they blend so well.
I don't care. I don't care what lake you're fishing at. There's a moment where you have to let things settle down. Like you pull into an area, you let your boat down. A lot of times you'll drop your trolling motor. And I learned this off the down scan before I had forward facing sonar. You're not seeing anything underneath the boat. And then all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, you'll start seeing fish come into play. They're sucked all the way to the bottom. You can't see them.
Right.
So same thing with live scope.
Right.
I mean, but what I use it for is as far as where the fish aren't, if I'm not seeing a lot of like bait activity, I'm not seeing a lot of life, I'm typically don't have confidence that there's going to be a lot of fish in the area.
Right.
Yeah. The place I've learned where I can't just look is definitely when I'm like jerk baiting a bank, because I don't always fish brush piles with it. Sometimes it is just a steep bank. It's not that there's some days you can, because they'll be up off the bottom and you can see them. But there's a lot of days when they're hunkered in on those tight, steep, channel swing banks. You have to just fish for them. Mm-hmm. Now, it's nice to have the live scope because you'll throw it up there and be bringing it back, and 2 or 3 all of a sudden float up off the bottom, and it helps you find those fish. But I don't hardly ever see those ones. Those ones are really hard to spot, just like you were saying.
Even like a laydown. If you throw your jerkbait over top of a laydown, they're underneath that laydown.
Or the other side of it.
Or the other side of it. And all of a sudden 3 of them pop up. Like
one shoots out of it like a bottle rocket to eat your bait. You're like,
yeah,
I know you were there. Yeah. That happens a lot. That's a good question.
Yeah. One more question. We're going to shut this down. I know
Sure.
we said 2 questions a long time ago.
Yeah.
Robert says, which of the FX rods do you use for a frog and which rod for skipping a jig?
2 great questions. I love it. So for the frog, I have really come to love, and the one that's in that video of me boat flipping the 7-pounder is a 7.4 heavy moderate. It's got kind of a moderate bend, and I like that for fishing the grass. I think you keep fish pinned a little bit better with that parabolic bend. So that's my frog rod, 7.4 heavy. For skipping a jig, again, I go with the shorter rod. I'm throwing the 610 heavy. It is a bad to the bone jig skipping rod, and we do a lot of that on Lake of the Ozarks. So that one has been well tested for skipping a jig, and it skips a 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce really, really good. So those are my 2 rods I use.
Okay. I know when Matt Ells won that super tournament, he was throwing a different rod. He was throwing that Virtus rod, but it was like a 610, I think, like a shorter rod.
Oh yeah.
Docks.
Before I even fished FX, I fished a Daiwa rod that was a 610. So going to that 610 FX was awesome. I love that shorter rod. I mean, it makes you so much more accurate. It makes you you have so much more mobility between those docks. You know, guys using a 7.6, just like you don't have all the room in the world back there to make big casts like that. So the 610 is perfect for that.
Yeah, shout out to Harlan, man. Harlan had a strong finish down there in Florida.
Oh yeah. He got on that tiny little spot. It was 50-yard stretch that he
really
got. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And got on that little stretch and caught him up. Good. I was very happy for him.
Yeah, man. It's cool to see all you guys down there. There's so many guys from the Ozarks area that are competing. It's
like
cool
10. Yeah, is what they said.
It's neat. It's like I was looking through the list and
Crazy.
I'm like, oh, he's there. So
Yeah.
it's like all these local guys. It's really cool to see that.
Yeah, it's fun to see everybody down there too. I mean, it almost felt like we were fishing a regular tournament, like
a BFL or something, you know.
Oh, I'm sitting there with Andy Newcomb and Mike and Brad and Brock, and we're all just cutting up, laughing. It was like, this is weird. I mean, then you got Jacob Wheeler and Mark Dillons Jr. sitting on the other side of the room. You know, it's kind of like, whoa, you know. So that was definitely a cool moment. I tried to take it all in. You know, my first event fishing with some of these guys that I've really looked up to. I thought that was really special. When they were, I know all of us left just juiced up when we left we had a meeting and a dinner the night before the tournament. We had an off day. And so we had a dinner with everybody, had to show up. So it was really, really cool to see all those guys. And you're sitting there with Paul Elias and all these legends. And it was really cool.
Awesome. So did you feel any kind of nervousness or anxiety knowing that you were fishing with all those guys or around all those legends?
I wouldn't say in the tournament, no. I would say I definitely got, the only thing I got was like just really excited or really jittery at the little dinner.
Yeah. Right.
You know, fish are still fish. And that's what I always try to tell myself, like 15 pounds is still 15 pounds, 20 pounds is still 20. No matter who I'm fishing against, I'm really just fishing against the fish.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that never really worried me. And none of even the really big names were the guys that did. I mean, Brian Latimer did well, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, that's not what I'm afraid of. I just got to worry about catching bass. So I was never worried about like, oh gosh, the competition just got harder. You know, I knew that going into it, that these guys were all going to be good. But no, I did get a little bit, I don't know, butterflies in the stomach, you know, whenever we're sitting there at that meeting and they're talking about, you know, everybody that's fishing it and the legacy of this lake and all that. And all of a sudden it just kind of hit us all. I mean, I was looking over at Brock and we were kind of smiling and laughing at each other like, this is freaking cool.
Yeah.
You know? So
this is really happening.
You know, you don't, whether we do this for the rest of our lives or not, you know, getting to jump down here and do it right now is just what a cool experience, you know. So I mean, I hope to be able to do it for the rest of my life. I hope I can do well enough to continue, but either way, I'm just really happy I get the opportunity to. So
absolutely,
that's good stuff, man. That's good. That's a great, that's the way to look at it right there. Live in the moment and just take it all in and let it happen.
That's what I was trying to do. I was grinning ear to ear. So It was cool.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, let's wrap this up. Any final shout outs or anything you want to
Where can they follow you at? Let's follow the whole season.
Yeah. So I have Facebook, Instagram, now even got a TikTok. Ooh, I hate that. But yeah. And now just started a YouTube. A lot is going to come out on that this year because we are videoing every single one of our events and editing a video based on that. So cool. I'll be posting a YouTube video for each one of the events. I'll start editing here soon on Okeechobee. So getting that done. Actually going to post some footage from Grand Lake for everybody fishing Grand Lake coming soon. I will be posting some Grand Lake footage from last year. I got it all finished up. I just got to export it and get it out to YouTube. So I would say Austin Culbertson Fishing is where you can find me at every one of those. It'd be Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. So that's where you can follow along. Thank you to all my sponsors that have made this possible, I guess, as a shout out, like right there, Baitworks on your shirt. I mean, those guys are amazing. Boatworks has been amazing to work with, getting me a boat every year. So I couldn't be happier. Obviously repping the Crocagator.
Oh yeah. That's a cool hoodie. I like that.
Yeah. Oh, I love these. I was telling her she needs to probably make these for everybody that wants one, because she made them for the pro staff. And I'm like, and I took a picture of this, and I have a kind of a snap group of fishermen, and they're all like, where did you get that? So
yeah,
people love it. But anyway, that's pretty well it for me. I just excited to see what the rest of the season goes. Hopefully I could be back on here and have won one or something like that. So
oh man, you're welcome. You're welcome on here anytime, man. It was great to hang out with you and to meet you. And we'll have you back because I had a bunch of questions, and it was just great conversation. When something's going one way, you just keep it going and expand on it.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, we probably didn't even get into half of your questions there. Sorry about that.
That's the best streams, when you've got a bunch of stuff written down and you don't even have to look at it. It just kind of happens. Cool. So it's good stuff. Cool. So yeah, thanks again for coming on. Have a great evening, and we'll be following you, man. We're pulling for you. So good luck out there on the trail.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And thanks for everybody. If you're new on here, this is your first time on here. We do this every Monday night at 7:30. So we'd love to have you back next week. And thanks everybody for hanging out. Shout out to Crocagator. Appreciate the great giveaway. She always brings the goods when we have these Crocagator pros on here. So thanks, Joey.
To stop by Baitworks too.
Yeah, go check out Baitworks. THM10 will get you 10% off your first order. Make sure and take advantage of that code, man. That's it. Until next time.